Hey, everybody. It's a little late start tonight. Well, like, it's not too late, right? I'm probably right on time. Anyway, had a few internet problems that I didn't realize, and I had to pick my mom at the airport. And I got back and got to work, kind of prepping some images for the show tonight, and realized that I was offline. So hopefully we don't have any internet problems because it was fine when I left earlier today. But coming back. Yeah, I see I'm getting dinged already for something else. But at any rate, welcome to another episode of an interview that we haven't done in a very long time. It's been a while, and I see Bootlegging has found the Dino emoji or avatar, whatever the heck those things are called here at YouTube. But if you didn't know it, I did finally add one for Dino. So good evening, all. Welcome, comic art fans, to another fun comic art live discussion. So before we get started again, I just wanted to thank everybody, again, for just all the support over the Thanksgiving holiday, and just I got a lot of great emails, and again, it's great to be a part of this hobby and to have everybody enjoying it with me and enjoying it together. Yeah, the Dave Butt, Marcus, exactly. No, there is no contest tonight. No entering contest whatsoever. Hey, Michael, nice to see you. Thanks for renewing your premium membership recently. Claim Bill. Yep. Thank you, Mel. But so again, here's the thing. I actually haven't got any of my interviews lined up, but it was sometime a couple weeks ago when I saw that post on Facebook by Sam Hare, and it was also on CAF with that Daredevil cover. And the story behind it was so cool. I was like, you know what? This is the perfect person, if I can get him to do it, to be on the next interview show, because I just knew that we were going to have a lot to talk about. Deep history of being in the hobby, and lots of cool artwork that some of it, hadn't been seen before in a while. So I'm going to bring Sam on right now, and we're going to get talking about Sam's experience in comic art collecting. Hey, Sam, how you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. This is awesome. I don't get to talk about this stuff very often, and most of the people I know don't understand the hobby, civilians, as John Byrne would call them on the Byrne Robotics and all that. I used to lurk there a long time ago. But thank you. Thank you, Bill. Good to finally meet you.
No,
Talk
it's
to you
my
every once
pleasure.
in a while, very briefly online over the years. I've been on CAF, I think, since '07, and I was lurking on there, God, probably. When did you start CAF? Was it right around 2000?
2003.
Okay,
So
I remember being on there the first year you had it up. I mean, I love art. These are my Picassos and Rembrandts. And it's like there's pieces I still would love to see one of these days. I'm sure they're in black holes, and so this is great to talk art and do all this. Thank you again for having me on.
no, it's my pleasure. These things are a lot of fun. This is our chance to shine as a hobby and talk about our experiences in it. And
Sure.
it's long overdue, because this is something that a lot of people, a lot of collectors start out in, and they don't really know other collectors. You kind of feel like you're in a vacuum. You don't know how to get started. And then it turns out, wow, there's a whole lot of people that are in the hobby that have had similar experiences as you. And I think getting these stories out there, the chance to talk to one another has been great. I mean, it's been great for me.
Yeah,
So
and it's really cool because I think there's also our specific generation. I don't know how old you are. I was born in '70. I'm 51, and you know, not only the art, but growing up in the '80s, that was an extremely special time to be reading comics. All the stuff that was coming out back then. You can't replicate it. And then seeing the art for some of that stuff later on, and then of course what's happened in the hobby in the last 20 years with the prices, and I mean unreal. Especially that last heritage auction from about 3 weeks ago. That was kind of a shocking for me personally. I thought I was familiar with the way the hobby was, and I kind of had an idea about prices, but everything in that auction was like, But yeah, thanks again. This is great. I appreciate
no,
that.
it's my pleasure. So, but yeah, I agree. It's the hobby is in a different place than it was. Well, definitely 20 years ago, but even just 2 years ago, at the pace things are on right now. But it's been an interesting time, and I think it's cool because it has brought out a few people who were past collectors who you didn't know a lot about what they had. People are kind of showing things off more. There's things appearing in Heritage or Comic Connect auctions that people haven't seen in a while, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it's a great time to be a part of the hobby, and to be, it's a bad time to be a buyer. It's a great time to be a seller, right? So
That's for sure. Yes.
yeah, but But so if you've seen these before, we always kind of start off with your origin story. We want to tell us a little bit about how you got interested in comics early on. And I do have some photographs that you had sent me, and I probably will not show them in the proper order. But I think you're probably a lot like me, starting out in comics and whatnot. And I used to take pictures of my comic collection. I'd spread them out on the floor. And I'm like, man, I am like the king of my domain. I've got 200 comics. I love them all. And back, and I was born in '68. So yeah, I mean, we're
roughly the same generation, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. So around, in the late '70s when I started collecting comics, that's when I'd do that. I'd like spread them all out in nice little stacks. This is my Fantastic Fours and my Thors and my Avengers and my Marvel Treasuries over here. And I'd make it look really cool. And I'd take a couple pictures and, and I still got them. I don't know where they're at.
Obsessively, compulsively sorting them. Oh, here's the Defenders stack. Here's my.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I could look right here. There's some of my Hulk magazine pieces with some of my Slurpee cups in the back. See, near and dear to my heart. And then and then see here. This was me getting creative with my comic collection. Look at that sucker, man.
Oh, hold on. I
don't think I've ever shown this there before, but yeah, you can see.
That's amazing. It's like, funny? Oh my God, all the ROMs. You can't make out a whole bunch of stuff because
there's an X. Oh, I remember. Oh, that's X-Men 175 at the very back, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, actually, the one in the back is 37. So yes, it's funny. And so yeah, I keep these things. I don't know,
My eyes really.
I don't look at them all the time, but they're outside of my family photos. Those are the only photos I have in this room. Are my comics.
It's funny because I kind of envy you because being born in '68, I was like 1 year too late to start to catch the end of Byrne's X-Men run. And as an early teenager, I was obsessively buying the back issues because, of course, in the early '80s and mid '80s, that was. The Byrne X-Men was like the absolute pinnacle, at least in where my friends and where I lived, and I wound up getting most of the, actually, I think I got 3/4 of the run, but they were so expensive. Even 3 years down the line, it was like, try and get issue 110, for example. I think they were all $15-$20. I mean, it was even the Cockrum stuff before Byrne was, and I'm not talking 94, 95. It was like 105 was still like a $30 book. I don't remember exactly, but so that would have been cool. I guess the way I started was my first comic that I ever saw or knew about was Flash 251. A friend of mine had a copy of it. I was like, wow, that's really cool. He was telling me about it, and I thought he was talking about a dog like Lassie. I'm like, and he showed me it. It was like this guy, I'm still looking for that cover. I've never seen it surface, the 251 cover. Anyway, that next month, I got my mom to take me to this, it was like a liquor store, convenience store called Tipsy Fog, and I got Captain America 212 and Flash 252. And I went back and looked at those books recently, and they're really dark, disturbing books for like a 6 or 7 year old. I think that would have been 1977. I mean, the Captain America book is like filled with apocalyptic imagery. Every page is like the world around him is on fire, and the Red Skull is like tearing, about to beat his head in with a rock. And I remember staring at that cover for hours as a kid. It was just like, you've got this heroic guy, but his eyes are like all messed up, and you've got this evil, I was like 7 reading this. And then you had this Flash 252. I should have had a picture of the cover, but it's the elongated man goes insane. It's a long story, kind of thinks he's a criminal, and he winds up with this power to sort of melt things. And, the first part of the issue is pretty normal Flash trying to figure out what's wrong with him. But at the last 2 pages, I pored over these pages for hours as a kid because he traps him on this airport, the Concorde airport runway. He gets him immobilized and starts punching him. But when he's punching him, he's beating him literally out of shape. And by the last panel, he's pounded the Flash into this like goo that's just spread out over. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, it scarred me, but in like a great way, And I mean, from those 2 books, it started everything. In about 1982, my parents separated and I moved out to Simi Valley, California, Ventura County. And I just happened to live 10 minutes behind this comic book store a 10-minute walk door to door called the Comic Book Nook, and it was our local LCS of the day. It lasted until the early 90s. And, I would go up there. Yeah, that's actually a costume contest in 1983. And to prove how topical it was, the kid on the bottom is Arian, Lord of Atlantis, if you remember that short-lived DC book. And the guy in the middle is my friend Jason. He was the Unknown Soldier, because that was an easy costume to put together. And I was Nick Fury, but technically a Nick Fury from a very specific What If issue that was set. It was actually the issue that the first appearance of the Iron Man 2020. If I can't remember the number of that issue, but and we lost. There was a guy who was like an early cosplayer, and he came as Black Bolt one year, and the next year he came as Nova, the Human Rocket, and they were incredible costumes. I mean, everybody in the contest went, "Yeah, that guy should be the winner." I know there's a newspaper article floating around with his picture, but and the cool thing about that store, I was a little 12-year-old kid, and the clerk, I was like that new generation getting into comic books. I would bag issues and for store credit, and they would be like, "All right, you need to be buying this issue." Daredevil. There's Frank Miller's Daredevil. I caught the very end of it I think it was literally issue 187. I'd actually bought it when I was the first Peter Parker issue. And I loved that story. And then I bought 161 when I was 9. I think it came out in 79. It didn't actually do much for me, but man, those last issues, I remember when there was an issue after Jensen started doing all the pages from Miller's layouts. And there was one issue that had Black Widow doing a jump kick at the camera as a splash page. And at the back of the issue, they published Frank Miller's 8x11 layout. And we were like, oh, just like gathered around this, when the issue came, because of course, I was so close. I would go up every Wednesday for the new books. 1983 was really special because that was the Thor 337 year and the Simonson Thor year. That I remember 83 was all about Simonson's Thor run. So I read that. I missed the issue, but I wound up getting it for Christmas. I think there's a picture of me holding up a Star Wars comic, early Omega Men comic, and the 337 comic. But it was a great time. And there it is. And that's my comic collection. That picture was taken in 1983, probably November, right after my first comic convention, first San Diego Comic-Con. I remember the owner of the Comic Book Nook has a letter published in one of the Frank Miller Daredevil issues, something about he wanted to see Heather get eaten by a Gila monster because he hated the character. And Frank Miller came in to sign at the Nook in 1985, and I remember he was like, I published this letter, and I remember I got up to the front. It was the first time, I think it was maybe the first time I met Miller. Like, weirdly, he was really accessible back in the 80s. You could kind of run into him at the conventions. I must have met him like 3 or 4 times, just weird for weird reasons. I mean, I was a little kid, but and I was like, the Heroes for Hunger book had just come out, and I was like, what was it like working with Harlan Ellison? Because he'd done 3 pages with Harlan Ellison. The book was like this big book for charity around the time of We Are the World, the Michael Jackson song. And then after I asked, I was like, stupid, like the Chris Farley. Why didn't I ask him about any, like, Daredevil, which was my favorite thing in the world? Anyway, the thing that really got me into collecting art was the San Diego Comic-Con. And there was I think everybody our age will remember, there was a run during 1 month at Marvel called Marvel Assistant Editors Month. And they were these, the kid who collected Spider-Man came out of that. And they were just these really cool, I mean, the idea was that the Marvel assistant editors were given control of Marvel, while the editors went to some comic convention. And I was a big Luke McDonnell Iron Man fan, and the backup story in that Iron Man issue was incredible. I thought it was about these kids, it set in the Marvel universe, who pretended they were the Avengers. And the storyline in the Iron Man books was he had gotten back and he'd become an alcoholic again, lost his company. So the kids kick him out of the Avengers because they have to do everything that's happening in the Marvel universe of the Avengers. And he winds up going on a binge drinking pop and winds up getting back in the team. It was just this great story. It didn't talk down to kids my age. And I thought for sure it would be like a spin-off book. But anyway, the assistant editors month is more. I looked at it, I'm like, they're going to this convention. It's like I don't know if I even had heard of a comic convention before, but it was in San Diego, and it had this. It had in the context of the books, it had this kind of really big reputation. So I begged my dad. I'm like, this would have been probably early 80 or right around beginning of summer 83, and I think the convention was in June that year, because it was never the same weekend like it is now. It's always July 21st, basically right around that. That's my long-suffering dad who bought me most of these comics and drove me down there. We went 83, 84, 85, 86 with him. Thanks for posting that. He'll get a kick out of this. He's actually watching this live right now, as a matter of fact.
Great. I'm glad.
And we drove down there. In fact, the picture of me in the striped shirt that you showed earlier, that was Comic-Con 83. You can see I'm wearing the badge on the very side of my shirt. And I just that was my first exposure to it. I mean, I remember meeting Kirby. I met Kirby. He came to the comic book Nook, and he signed for Captain Victory. Captain Victory 1 had just come out, and actually Captain Victory 2 was on the stands at the store. And that was like, for me, these were rock stars for like a little kid. It's like Beatles, Elvis, that didn't matter. But Kirby, and as I got into those, John Byrne, Frank Miller, Simonson, all these guys, Jaime Hernandez, later on when I was mature enough to understand Love and Rocket, guys are just worshipped. So in 83, actually, that was the acquisition of my very first piece of art. I don't really remember too much about the dealer's room. I do remember going to Kirby's booth, and he was there. I think he had a bunch of Captain Victory art, because this would have been, I think Captain Victory would have been like 4 or 5 issues in. I'm guessing. I can't remember, of course. Kirby was always just the nicest guy in the world. But I remember we were leaving the convention that day, it was, so you had the dealer's room, and the entrance was here, and you had the main hall, and we were in this far southeastern corner. There was a big original art display. I don't know who the dealer was, and I don't even remember what was there, but I'd never seen original art before. And I'm looking through it, and of course, like most people who've never been exposed to it, 2 things that always threw me off was, it's not the size of the comic book. Wow, that's really weird. It's so much bigger, and it's black and white, and so I was really like kind of tripping on it, and there was a lot of it. Back in those days, they had these big wooden tables that probably dated back to the 40s or 50s or 60s. They're all beat up, and they would just open the tables, and everybody's booth, I guess apparently according to what they paid, got so much space, and they would stack the tables. And the art, I mean, I've seen like old newspapers treated better than the way the original art was treated back in the 80s. I mean, it was in stacks and like disheveled, and there'd be stacks next to each other, and people would be like flipping through it like flip books, and like pulling it out. I mean, it's no wonder when you see pieces from the 70s and 80s and the corners are all bent. It's like, it wasn't because of the production. It was because of the way it was treated when it was on the secondary market.
Right.
And my first piece of art, I happened to, I pulled out the cover of World's Finest 286, and I immediately recognized it because I just read the book. I had the book laying on my floor at home at the time. And I was like, wow, this is such a cool, this is wild. This is of all the, there's only one of these. And I've got the comic, and I'm literally holding the cover to this thing. Dad, will you buy this for me? And I didn't have any money, or I don't know, maybe I had $15 or something. I have no idea. I was getting an allowance, that's how I was able to pay for my comics. Anyway, I remember it was not even $40. It was, I want to say it was 30, but it could have been $35. And the thing that always impressed me, it's hard to see in this picture, but there was this, one of the main reasons I bought it, 13-year-old logic, was there was these alternate prices that were taped on to the side of them. And it was like the Canadian version, and I think they were DC was experimenting with different price formats, or maybe a different way to display the price on the covers. And that was kind of funny. It was kind of half the reason I bought the cover. I was like, so this is kind of interesting. Anyway, but the art, I may have known who Buckler was. By 83, I'm sure I knew who Byrne was. I'm sure I knew Kirby for sure, because as a kid, man, I just after that Captain America book, I connected with Kirby like hardcore. You know, I bought Machine Man when it came out. I bought Devil Dinosaur when it came out. And when he went to Pacific Comics, I was like a massive Pacific Comics fan. And I bought everything. I mean, so I saw in CAF finally recently, it was the cover to like one of the most famous Pacific Comics books I've ever remembered. It's the Rocketeer and then a Ditko bottom cover. I can't remember what it is.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that's in Joseph Melchior's collection, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I saw it not too long ago. I'm like, oh my god, because back in when I was buying Pacific Comics, and that was one of the other reasons I went to 83, because the Pacific Comic gang, a bunch of the people were signing that year, and I really, really wanted to meet him. And the Kirby thing was really the big issue, but then I really started buying everything, Silver Star and Star Slayer and Rocketeer, of course, and Miss Mystic. One issue came out, then 4 years later, the next issue came out.
Yeah, Neil Adams, he wasn't. I was the same. I mean, I bought a lot of the same books as you because they were great titles. The stories were fantastic.
Oh, it was incredible. It was such a weird. I only have a minor, fleeting memories of the 70s. I bought a lot of DC in the 70s. The Flash was my favorite. I wasn't like a Marvel or DC guy. I bought basically everything. But there was this weird revolution in the 80s, and I hate to sound like an okay boomer, but man, it's hard to, that was a really cool time to be buying comic books because, Watchmen, Born Again, Dark Knight, Miller's Daredevil, Burns X-Men, which I missed by a few months, Love and Rock. Just that whole independent craze that happened, and PC Comics. And then they went down in 85 or 86. I was gutted. I thought at one point I had almost a complete run of every PC comic ever published because it was like an automatic buy in the store. I actually do have, about 8 years ago, maybe it was 2008, I did wind up getting the cover to Captain Victory 2, which was really special for me because I remember that was the cover that was on the stands in the day that day that I went Jack Kirby signed. I will, I used to be a black hole collector, but there are a few reasons in the last couple of years that I've decided to sort of put my art out there. I think one of the major reasons is I just love seeing this stuff. I know there's the fresh to market argument, and some people argue the privacy argument, but man, I saw a thread on the CGC boards that was like, what if we just put an anonymous catch-all board somewhere on CAF and people can just post these covers? Because I have this weird obsession with, I would love to see, of all things, 2 covers, Alpha Flight 3 and Alpha Flight 12. I'm kind of weirdly obsessed. I think I know where they are. I think I recently found out, not 100% sure, but it's like I probably will never see them. And if they go on Heritage, I'm never going to be able to afford them because, Anyway, so that was my introduction to comic art. And I wish I could say like some of the people like Will and Albert and all this that I got bit by the bug, but for some reason, comic art back in those days, first you have to take my age into account. I just didn't have a whole lot of money, but it was a weird, it was an oddity because people still were really into the comics themselves. And the original art was just expensive enough that it was hard to develop a collection of it because everything was like, $50, which is nothing, obviously nothing now. But at the time, $50 would give you.
That's a premium. You buy a lot of comics for that.
Exactly, and at my LCS, I vividly remember we had for years, maybe the entire time it was open, there was a giant size X-Men 1 that was probably a 9 or a 9.2, and it was the going price for that book was $75, and the going price for 181 was $75, and they had a Tales of Suspense 39 in there, and the going price, I think it was like $75 or maybe $100. So, you're going to buy this weird piece of art, or you're going to buy like a key issue that, is, and, some people just had the foresight to buy a lot of it. And I bought a couple of things, but I think we'd all buy a little bit more if we knew what the prices were going to be like in 2021. But that was my very first piece. My dad had it framed for Christmas that year. They glued it right to the board, actually, and at the time, I didn't think, and it hung on walls for years. And then about 4 years ago, I took it to the Getty Museum, and I had it conserved, and they carefully removed the glue. You can still see kind of spots on the back of it. I have it around here somewhere, but I won't pull it up. It's in this portfolio next to me. But anyway, I'm never going to sell it. It's like such sentimental value to that piece. So that was that one. I don't know. Do you want to?
Well, let's talk a little. So I do have a few other of those photos, I think, from San Diego with you with the expedition hat on. But your father bought that for you. Do you think if he wouldn't have bought it, that you would have been as turned? Do you think you would have walked away and just forgotten about comic art, or do you think the next time you?
No, I wouldn't have, because that year, and I mean that assistant editor's month, believe it or not, had this weird, that's what got me into San Diego Comic-Con. And I went to every single one. I go every year. I've only missed 3 since 1983. And eventually I would have come across comic art again and again and again. I remember in 84 or 85, as a matter of fact, there was, such a different world. Like, for example, I read a few years ago that 83, my first convention, the entire 4 days attendance was 5,500 people, so you could walk through the entire dealer's room twice and leave and never accidentally bump into somebody. It was just, it was pretty insane. And the things that people were bringing down for sale were really weird, off the wall things. And 84, yeah, the picture on the left is kind of a real interesting picture. It's hard to see, but it's like almost the ultimate picture of of collecting comics in the 1980s, because you can't really see from the picture, but the stuff that's on the table in front of me, that was the moment I bought a bunch of Frank Miller Daredevils. It was actually a major moment. That's when I got I probably got 10 or 12 issues. I bought pretty much 162 all the way to 170 or something. And you can see on the table, there's a 168.6, there's a 167, a 168, 168, and a 169, which is closest to the camera. In my hand is 167. And also in my hand, I know, is 165 and 164. But even funnier is that if you look right in front of me, there's a stack of X-Men 137s that are not bagged and boarded, and they were $4 each. Right in front of that is a stack of X-Men 141s that are not bagged and boarded. Right to the immediate right of that is a stack of Thor 337s that are not bagged and boarded. And then I can't really make out what's on the rack or the display. There's a Strange Adventures book on the display, but I can't tell what it is. I just thought that picture was hilarious because it's wow, there's a gold mine in front of me. Yeah, and that stupid pith helmet, I wore it. It was like my trademark. And what was interesting about those days is, and I may be wrong, but I don't ever remember a single costume. Nobody dressed up. Maybe if somebody wore a costume, it looked really weird, not really even close to the comics. There may be a few that I don't remember, but it was basically a lot of civilians just down there. That's kind of an interesting picture, because I think that's Mike Zeck in front of me, or what's his inker's name? Beatty, right. I could never remember his name. I wasn't sure that was actually his name. I think that's Zeck and Beatty signing. And I'm holding, I think, what's a Secret Wars page in that picture. And right in the top of the stack in front of me is a Captain America cover that I think might be 275. That was 1984. That picture was taken. 84 was a really watershed year because in 84, that's when Secret Wars came out. And Secret Wars, for my generation of kids, you could talk about the quality aside and does it hold up, which kind of is irrelevant because it changed kind of everything. You had all these characters and their status quo across the board was changing. I remember, I would go up there Wednesday night. Everybody was really excited because the rumor mill was talking about this black costume Spider-Man might wear. And that first month it happened, I think it was the month that #1 came out. They all go to the Secret Wars. Every character involved, the last page of the last issue, the big thing appears and they go in. Then when 2 came out, they're all coming back and they've all got, the weird changes. Like the Hulk's got a broken leg and Iron Man's armor is all tweaked up. It's been all modified, and Spider-Man's black costume, of course, was the major change back then. She-Hulk joined the team. She hadn't been on the team. I think she joined Secret Wars, right? I can't remember. So that was like another really special event, because there'd been nothing, Contest of Champions had been out, but nothing like that before. So, again, a really exciting time to be, and it was the one book I bought 5 issues. And every month I bought 5 copies of every issue that came out, because I'm like, the little teen speculator, for whatever reason.
Oh no, I did the same thing.
You
couldn't help yourself.
It's just weird because, I was in high school at the time. I had a weird haircut, and I was into Star Trek and Doctor Who and comic books. And for some reason, that really didn't make you a very popular person in high school. I was kind of hyperactive, so comics, and I lived right behind the store. So comics were literally my life, I remember this exact convention, just a weird little story. This was 1984. And I was in the dealer's room, may have been this very day. And I walked all the way to the back northwestern corner where all the loading docks were. The first thing I remember is Mark Hamill came around. He wasn't advertised for being at the show, but he was. I found out later he's a big comic collector. And I still remember because I was actually as tall back then as he was. He was a fairly short guy, which I was pretty shocked about. And, it was 1 year after Return of the Jedi came out. So it was like Luke Skywalker walked around the corner at me and like starstruck, and he was wearing these gold wire rim glasses. I'll never forget that. But at that exact moment, that was in that very corner. And I turned the corner and there was a booth right there. It was facing the wall of the loading docks. This would be on the farthest north wall, northwestern corner. And there was an old woman there. She probably was, man, I would almost say she was 80. But, when you're 14, you have a skewed perception of people's ages, who are older than 20, basically. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at her booth, and it was really, she had a lot of artifacts from like the 1940s, like fandom. I like the Captain Midnight decoder ring, for example, and I can't remember what they all were, but I'll never forget. I looked up and she had the wire frame display, which most of the people at the con were given to post items in the background on. And I swear, it was the cover to Detective Comics. I think it was issue 15. It was the issue where I can't remember the number, but it's the one where the guy in the top hat is like looking at the camera, and he's got a safe in front of him. He's got a string of pearls in his hand, and then there's a mirror right above the safe, and you see cops busting into the room. I was obsessed with the Golden Age books because for Christmas of '82, I got a copy of the Overstreet Price Guide, and they had a big insert that was just pictures of Golden Age books, and it really struck something in me. I was just really fascinated by the energy and the vitality of this weird world of comics that was long gone. And so, I knew the cover. I mean, I couldn't have told you what issue. But the other thing that struck me as really funny about it is that she had a price on it, $10,000. And at that point in my life, I had never seen anything. That's the issue, exactly right there. I had never seen anything anywhere for sale for like $10,000. You could even buy I think they were an Isuzu truck. I remember, and it was $59.95 because I remember the commercials were running during KCOP's Star Trek and syndication. So $10,000 was like, I don't know what I was more shocked about. Now, of course, I was talking to a collector, a fairly well-known collector, a couple of days ago, and we kind of concluded our conversation, and he happened to mention, I remember when $8,000 was a lot of money in this hobby. Not anymore. That's
no,
for sure.
Not at all.
Man. And I was a huge Harlan Ellison fan, and that I got a chance to meet him because I was always about meeting the golden age guys specifically. And Harlan was around. He was writing, and I think he was writing in the 40s and 50s at least. And so I was like, I'd read a bunch of his books by then. I was really into that kind of punk rock attitude he had, and the mouth that he had, and he was just like kind of an idol of mine. And yeah, he was signing for Night of the Enemy. I think that's Ken Stacy, and yeah, so that was a big honor to get to meet him on that day. Yeah, so I'm actually right to the left of the guy shaking the guy's hand. It's funny because my first exposure to the Golden Age books, my dad had taken me in 1983 to a very famous comic shop called the Golden Apple. I don't even know if it's still around anymore. But I was in there, and there was it was a coverless Superman #3, and the guy who had it was like $20. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to buy it. I didn't even care about the condition. I just wanted to look through it. And the guy actually turned out to be Scott Free, who became famous later on as Frank Miller's comic book dealer. He was a really good friend of the Kirby family. And years later, I started going back. This is the satellite store, not the one in Hollywood, but there was one on Reseda Boulevard. Their Golden Apple 2, I think it was called. And years later, I started going there, and I was really into reading and not collecting, but more reading in the late 90s. And I remember going into the store, and I was talking to the guy, because Scott's really charismatic and outgoing. And I happened to mention the story. He's like, oh my God, that was me. I sold that to you. And I was so impressed with this little kid who just seemed to be into you didn't care about the condition. You just wanted to read the book. And we became friends, actually. I worked in post-production for a long time, and things slowed way down in like 2000, 2001, 2002. And he got me a job. I wound up working at the Golden Apple for like 6 months. And it was really cool because, of all people, Len Wein would come into the store. He lived right around the corner. His wife was a lawyer. Ironically, she worked in the same building as this post-production studio that I worked in like 99, 2000. And he was just the coolest guy. He would come in, and he would get a stack of books like this, and he would hang out, and everybody, most of the employees had to come in and work on Wednesdays because there was a lot of books to bag and take off the shelves and put on the shelves. And we would hang out, and I remember laughing about, things that he found, absurd, some, I don't remember what the comics were, but, and then I saw him like 2000, I don't know, 16. I'd been talking to Scott Free, because we're friends on Facebook, and he's like, oh, by the way, Len's not doing too good, and I ran into him at San Diego. I don't remember what year. I'm making it up. I think it was 15, but it could have been another year. And he was, it still like almost brings me to tears because he was just crippled with pain. He was in a wheelchair, and I remember him as this, kind of vital, just really, happy, kind of go-lucky guy. And I was trying to talk to him, but I could literally, I was, hey, you probably don't remember me, but I worked at the Apple back in about 20 years ago. And it was like, I couldn't speak because I was like so in shock by what he looked like. That just sucked, man. I mean, he was a good guy, and nobody deserves to go like that. But I don't think he lived very much longer after that show. But anyway, that was a bummer. But he was a really cool guy. I met him once.
When you're in the hobby for a long time, you run into a lot of situations like that. I mean, or you just where we age and our heroes age, right? And that's things can go sideways.
Yes, like when Kirby wound up getting cancer. I know there's some kids, like in the 90s where he was pretty much bald. In the 90s, I made a bunch of friends in San Diego, and I was really just more about going down there and hanging out with my friends at Comic-Con. I didn't care about comics. I didn't care. I don't think I even bought a single piece of art from like 90 to 99. So I kind of wasn't going to the panels, but I mean, I saw later, and I was so happy. Scott Free was telling, because Scott and the Kirbys were really good friends, and Scott went to one of their panels. It was one of the last ones that Kirby went to, and I was telling Scott and I were talking at one point, and I was always, do you think Kirby knew how it might? It was a shame that he didn't live as long as Stan Lee, just to see how admired and worshipped he is, by by us. I mean, he's the king. He was the king, and it's like he died in '93 and or early '94, I think, right around the time that Zappa died. Weirdly enough, and Scott was telling me, it really made my heart glad, because he's like, yeah, they did it was an award or an inkpot thing, or it was some sort of tribute, and they had him there, and when they announced his name, the place just went crazy. I mean, it was like people were stamping on the ground, screaming, and I was like, that's really cool. I mean, it's too bad he didn't live. Like now, if he'd be in every one of those Marvel movies. He should have been.
Of course he would. Yeah.
He had cameos in every one of them. I mean, that guy was like a straight up rock star to me. I mean, I followed everything he did, and people, I don't know if a lot of the younger people know, but his art was not well liked in the late 70s and early 80s. I mean, it's insane to think about, but a lot more people know particulars about his career in the late 70s, but he wasn't, his books weren't really selling. I mean, I don't think Devil Dinosaur went more than 7.
Right. I mean, I had when I started collecting comics, I didn't understand Kirby. Like, why is this guy still drawing comics? So when I first started buying, that was my mindset. I didn't think, because I didn't have the back. I didn't understand where he came, his contributions early. All I saw was, like you said, Devil Dinosaur and some other titles that I just like. I don't get it. Why are they doing this? Because you got Byrne coming onto the scene and George Perez, and that's all I could think about. I'm trying to draw like them myself, and like, why is this guy still got books? And I mean, I don't think like that at all today, but back then, when I'm 13 or 14, it just
sure.
makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I just happened to catch him, when he was, I really, that Captain America run, that he did from 193 to whatever 214, that really, that just, as a 6-year-old or 7-year-old kid, I was like, I love this guy. I couldn't have told you his name, but I learned it. I'm pretty sure I learned it pretty quickly after that, because I was buying. I didn't have a ton of money, but I was buying probably a comic a month. My parents would buy, and I was like, his style was unrecognizable. I mean, it was totally recognizable. Certainly not unrecognizable.
Oh yeah,
totally recognizable. And there was something about it that it was my sweet spot. And I loved that stuff. And no matter what he bought, now my dad, I give myself pride that I got Kirby, but what I didn't get, that I kind of beat myself, I didn't understand the Fantastic Four. I didn't even really understand Byrne's. I didn't kind of get the FF for some reason. Mm-hmm. And I think the part of it was they were the face of Marvel along with Spider-Man back in the 70s. And they had a cartoon that was kind of lame. And it seemed, it really did not capture the magic of those first 100 issues, that are beyond reproach. I mean, that should always be the top run of Marvel, no matter. I love the Byrne X-Men, but that should be the number one in my, I put that above Ditko Spider-Man, those first 100 issues. Of course, I educated myself in my late 20s. And by that time I was like, I'm an idiot. I should have understood this. I should have been buying this. I should have at least bought the covers that he did in the 70s. I did buy and love the What If issue he did, where he became the Thing and Stan Lee became Mr. Fantastic. That was amazing. Right. But I was just such a fan of Jack's at the time. Jack, Kirby, the kid, Anyway, I can't remember what I was talking about, but I followed him through his Pacific Comics career, and I think by Superpowers, that was 1983, I think it was January 1983 or December 1982. I think it was December 1982, because I wanted to mention two things about that day. First of all, it's kind of a hilarious picture, because there were so many people in the store right then that I could not get Jack's attention. And the guy would have been, oh yeah, no problem, let's take a picture. But I could not get his attention because there was a counter separating Jack and me from all the people. I managed to squeeze through the people around the counter. And for years I looked at this picture and I would just cringe, because it's like I don't think he even knew I was standing in the picture with him. And I remember Mike Thibodeau. I wish I could find it. I was trying to find it before we did this. He painted. I think Mike Thibodeau did Christmas signs for offices, for like stores. Back in the day, they come and paint Christmas trees. And for the comic book Nook that year, he did a Captain Victory. This really cool. At the time, I thought it was Jack Kirby that painted it because he had the style down so perfectly. And I know I have a picture of it somewhere, but I couldn't find it. And the other thing I'll never forget about this is in the back part of that store, there was a little area set aside for gaming. I was a big Dungeons and Dragons, and there was another role-playing game called Champions that I don't know if anybody would remember, but it was up the superhero.
Oh yeah, I had Champions and Villains and Vigilantes.
Right, Villains and Vigilantes. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I bought that just because of the Jeff D and Bill Willingham art. But I played that game a lot.
Oh my God! And it's like, what a career that guy had. Not to get off on another topic, but I remember his art from the Dungeons and Dragons modules, Queen of the Demon Web. I think he did the insert of, and the way he signed his name was all straight lines with little circles above the eyes. And then I loved his art, and then the Elementals, and then he does Fables, which was like one of my favorite books. And he's not even drawing it; he's just the writer. I'm like, this guy. Right. This guy is incredible. I love that guy so much. But I
always tell everybody, every opportunity I get, if anybody ever finds a piece of Willingham D&D art, it could just be a small spot illustration of a dwarf with a battle axe. I want it because that's my dream
I don't
piece.
Think you can find it though.
No, you can't find any. I've never ever seen one piece.
I've never seen. There's one that I remember distinctly, and I think it's Queen of the Demon Web, but I could be wrong. Where it's a bunch of drow elves, but if you look in the corner, there's a treasure chest, and if you look at what's in the treasure chest, it's Thor's hammer, Captain America's shield, and Iron Man's helmet. I was like, and I remember I was hardcore. I'm like, oh my God, my friend and I were just tripping out. God, I think he snuck this in there. It was like an Easter egg before we knew what Easter eggs was. But no, I'm right there with you. His D&D spot. I read some article, or maybe it was on the CGC boards, that I think somebody wound up cornering the market and has a lot.
Oh no, they have. Yeah, they want to open a museum and everything. But I do actually have a couple pieces.
I don't even care if I own it. I would just love to see some of it.
Oh yeah, no. And who knows how much of that art actually managed to live on. But I mean, I think I do have a couple of pieces by Jeff D from Villains Vigilantes, so cool. Like character illustrations, but not any of the the full panel pages that they would put into the modules and whatnot. But yeah, those were good times. I mean, I love both those guys.
I was just going to one other story. Just really quick, I was going to touch on about that Jack Kirby day was so that back in that corner, just really quick, they had this like a table with a map. You could play, and they would host games, and they had that butcher paper on a roll that came down. Pull it down, and you write stats or something. And to this day, I don't know if it was Kirby or Thibodeau, but I think it was Kirby, and he came in with a Marks-a-Lot and drew a literally life-size Silver Surfer holding the board. And it wasn't super detailed, but it was like a 6-foot, and I still remember that. And I was like, man, if that's around somewhere, I'm guessing the owner of the store, that guy Matt, wound up with it. That's a real kind of valuable,
very unique item.
A real unique special little thing. I'm sure it's all yellowed and brittle now because it was the crappiest paper. But I just remember because I was about this. I was probably I'm pretty tall, but at the time I was probably 5'2", and it was like my size. I'm like, oh my God, that's so effing cool. Jeez. But yeah, that was a great day, meeting Kirby, and glad I got to meet him at least once. I wish I'd met him later on, in the later 80s, but c'est la vie, right?
Yeah. So when you saw him that day and your dad took the picture, I assume, did you get anything signed? Did you?
Yeah, I did. In fact, there was another picture I totally forgot to put. I have a picture my dad took of me. It's in that bedroom where all the comic books are spread out. And I'm sitting in the closet. My back is in the wall. I think there's a box of Weird War comics. It's exactly where I was sitting. And I've got this stack of books he signed. They were nothing really special. I'd gone to the dollar bin and bought remember the Black Magic, the reprints that were, I think DC reprinted them in the early 70s. And then you could get that stuff for like $1. Kirby really, I still remember the back issue bins in 1982 and 83, right around the same time of that picture. You could go to the Fantastic Four. I still remember the Galactus 48, 49, and 50 were like $5. I mean, they were like 7 or maybe 8, 7.5, maybe 8 copies. but they were nothing. I mean, these books where you could get a whole run of Jack Kirby Fantastic Fours for like $5 each. I mean, not every one obviously, but it was like pennies, and so yeah, I did get to meet him. I said hi to him, and what's your name? And I don't have the books in front of me. I never sold my collection, and they're somewhere in the depths of it. I never sold anything in all these years, so I've got boxes and boxes of these stupid comic books. But yeah, no, I did get him to sign some stuff, just a handful of stuff, and there was a big line, and people were pressing in to talk to him. I was just glad, in retrospect, that even if his art wasn't on the level of what it would be, his art was fine. His reputation wasn't. People still loved the guy. I mean, that place was jam-packed with humans, and a lot of them, I was young for the time. A lot of them were like 18, 19, 20-year-old people. And, people that grew up with Kirby in the 60s who got to read, start with Fantastic Four 1 and read all of that great, like Scott Free. Scott Free used to tell me, I mean, that was his thing. Scott loves Jack Kirby, and he used to tell me, man, there was nothing like going to the store and getting the Tales of the one with Iron Man and Captain America, Tales of Suspense or Adventure. I can't remember what the book is called, because they all had those crazy names that did not reflect what was going on at the time.
They were figuring it out.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That was great. It was really cool. But yeah.
Awesome. I mean, well, we haven't had a chance with a lot of people I've interviewed where they had photographs back in the day where they were at San Diego. So I wanted to make sure we got to show all those that you sent to me, because I mean that's totally cool.
I hadn't seen the photograph.
Your father was doing this for you too. I mean, he's watching. We owe it all to him that he was documenting it.
Absolutely. And that he even took me down there, and because I would go down there, I would load like 4 or 6 short boxes of comics, because I was going to get every single comic signed, of course, because that was 13-year-old mindset. But he would drive down there, and we would spend 2 days, and I think the last couple of times we spent 2 or 3 days down there. And I hadn't seen those pictures since probably in 30 years. And I went to I saw him on Thanksgiving, and I told him about this, and I was like, I didn't think a single picture he had been taken. There is video footage that he took in '85, and I saw it about 25 years ago, and I was going to try and digitize it for this thing, but I remember the tracking is really messed up on it. One day I'll get it digitized, and I'll put it on YouTube, because it's kind of funny, because you can see a lot more of the dealers and stuff that was on the tables at the time. Mm-hmm. But it was really cool. There's probably 10 photos total, and like I said, that picture with all the 137 stack of 137s and 141s and 337s. I remember I scanned it in, and I was zooming in. I'm like, oh my God, what a crap. I mean, what a dream. I mean, when do you see all this stuff? So it was really cool. I'm very grateful. He did that for me back in the 80s. Awesome.
Very cool. And Ardath is reading my mind. I mean, I was going to say we should look at some art now from your collection.
Please, yeah, let's do it.
Because we've got some pretty spectacular pieces to check out here, and we already showed one. So let's see here. This Batman cover is unbelievable.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I've told the story, but basically, there was a guy I didn't reconnect with until 30 years later on the Original Art Facebook board. Steve, I'm sorry, dude. My superpower is mangling people's last names, and I'll probably do it with everybody. Stazhauer, and this would have been 1988, and I met him in at the comic book Nook, because one of the clerks there said, "Oh, you're going to go to San Diego. This guy wants to carpool with you too. Steve lived in Simi, and I lived in Simi, and we just went down. I had a little green 260Z, and we loaded everything in. I seem to remember he had like a broken foot at the time. But maybe I'm misremembering. But and back in those days, you could walk around. And again, there was like maybe 8,000 people all 4 days that went in 1988. And yeah, we were leaving the convention, 1988. We were literally out of the dealer's room and walking in the main hall. We were going to our car, and across from the main dealer's hall, there was another hall about the same size of the dealer's hall. In the early 80s, they did the masquerade there, I think. And later on, they did dealer overflow, I think, because they started having a lot more dealer signing up for space at SDCC. And there was a table, like a round concession table near the entrance of that room. And there was a crowd of people around it. And, we looked at each other and went, oh, I wonder what this is. And we get over there. It was Bob Kane, of all people. And I was, again, a kind of a Bob, not a fanatic about the Golden Age guys. I love Byrne and Miller and Kirby. But I really had this fascination with the Golden Age era of comics. And I didn't know about Bill Finger. We all know about Bill Finger today. I mean, Bob Kane, I don't, like I said, I think I said it, don't go judge me too harshly. But at the time I was really like kind of starstruck, because that I always associated Bob Kane with Batman. His name was on everything. Certainly didn't draw everything, but his name was on it. And so, and he was signing autographs. And he was just the coolest guy. He was like interacting with his fans. And I think somebody had a sketch pad and he started drawing little pictures and signing things. And I'm like, I had $100 with me at that point. It was Sunday. I'd burned through, I don't know how much money I had at the time. And I'm like, I got to find a Golden Age Batman. It doesn't have to be like the first Martian Manhunter or some key book, just some nice condition, and just to get the dude to sign it. And I ran through the dealer's room, and it was like out of a movie. I was probably not even in there 5 or 10 minutes, and there was a guy literally standing in front of this. It was like one of those long wood tables. It wasn't like a giant original art area. It was just kind of a small one, and he had one of those wooden tables. He probably had about 6 stacks of art. They were all like 5, 10, 15 inches tall, and the guy was standing there in front of it, that's like in my first 5 or 6 comics I ever owned. My dad bought it for me, actually. He came home with it, or he ran into a store and bought it just on a whim. And so I had this real kind of sentimental connection with it. And so I saw the cover. I was like, how much do you want for this? And the guy's $95. And I went, sold. And I'm pulling out money. It's probably all wadded up into sweaty little balls basically in my pocket. The guy I said something like, you going to buy this? Because if you're not going to buy this, I'm getting this right now. And I had the money in my hand. The guy just kind of rolled his eyes, and he was kind of annoyed with me. But he hands it to me, and then I paid the dealer. I ran back. Everybody was still there at the table. In fact, there is a picture of Steve with Bob Kane from that very era. I was going to post it, but not really mine to post. So anyway, I ran back, and Bob was just like, wow, this is amazing. He was, and he really loved the Batman statue. I remember him fixating on the statue of Batman in the center, and he was just like, that's really good. Who drew this? Jim Aparo, because Jim Aparo was like my Batman artist. The first Batman. I missed all the, except for the House That Haunted Batman, which is like my all-time favorite Batman story. I'd missed all the Neil Adams era because I was just a little too old for it. But this is the stuff that was really hitting the stands at the time. And he's like, this is really terrific. And he signed it. And I remember when he signed the Bob Kane, he's all, see, that's how you know it's me, because I draw a little line under the E. Okay. You couldn't find that out because there was no internet. I actually had no idea when he told me that. I'm like, really? So all this, because it was pretty widely known, I think, that he had a bunch of ghost artists. I think I even knew that at the time, because my knowledge back in '88 was still pretty lacking. No internet to double check stuff on. And, he wrote Bat's Wishes. As a matter of fact, Steve, while I was gone, got him to do this little piece for me, which was kind of hard to see. But to my friend Sam, Bat's Wishes, he drew that really quick on a piece of... somebody had a sketch pad, and he was basically tearing the pieces in half. And he would do little head sketches. Steve got a really neat one with Batman, like little head sketches of Batman and Robin. And he drew this little bat, and I remember going, "That's really cool." I was almost like, I kind of wish I'd stuck around and not grabbed this cover, because I was really into sketches, like getting sketches by the Golden Age guys. In fact, one of the two of the things I'm going to put up on CAF eventually is Jerry Robinson, right? That was I was getting names mangled, but he was one of the early Batman guys, and he came to San Diego. God, it was in the 80s. It was like 1980. I don't know, 5, 6, 7. I think it was in the late 80s because I was definitely older and a little bit more in touch with what was going on. And they were expensive, and he had a huge line. He was in really good shape, and he was really there and really involved in talking to the fans. And I'm like, oh, I got to get a couple of sketches. And like I said, I think they were like, I mean, for the time, I think they were like $100 each, and for a sketch, and they may have even been more than that. I think they were 100, but I think I bought 2 of them. I bought a Batman and I bought a Joker sketch, and they were big. They were like, I don't know, something like that. They're on full size sheets, and they were head sketches and signed his name. And I was like, and one of these days I'm going to frame them and scan them. And I honestly haven't. They wound up. They're in a stack of stuff, and I like all my old 80s comic San Diego sort of artifact stuff, and I got to pull them out one of these days and scan them and put them up. I will.
You should. Yeah, I want to see my CAF.
It's funny. As an aside, I used to be a black hole collector. A lot of the stuff I've had for 30 years. Those Daredevil covers and whatnot. And only recently, it was a couple of acquisitions that really started. I kind of snapped out of it, and I started to kind of get into posting my art. But really, sort of the one thing that really made me kind of really go in that direction was, of all things, was this last Heritage auction. I've been doing, buying from Heritage since 2005. I bought this, as a matter of fact. I won't go into it because it's not one of the art. And it's not on CAF, but it's the Animal Man. It's kind of weird.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they had to do a black and white copy of the Flash. This is the last Grant Morrison issue, and I was a huge fan of Animal Man. I'd never seen anything like it. So when it showed up on CAF, that's actually not the original art. There's what I showed you is the cover, and they did a stat of the Bolin piece, and then you got the Bolin piece as well with it. It showed up. I'm like, oh my God, it was a really moving issue for me, because the cat that dies and the writer and the whole thing. And again, never seen anything like it. And I paid $1,500, I think, for it. But then this, and then cut to, the auction that ended, a couple weeks ago. And, my sweet spot is Kirby 70s stuff. And there were 2 incredible Kirby covers that above anything caught my eye. That Iron Man cover especially was like, I'd never seen it. I don't even remember seeing the cover for it, but that shot of Iron Man twisting, just in the way Kirby could do it. Like you could see everything about Iron Man. He's selling the character, the perspective down on the guy punching through the wall. It was at $13,000 for like 2 weeks straight. I'm like, I couldn't. I'm moving in about a month, so I knew I wasn't going to bid on it. But I'm like,
you were entertaining the thought that you might.
I really wanted. I was going to watch the live auction, and then I did make the decision. I figured, because I've been following the Kirby prices. I remember there was an Avengers cover where he's duking Wonder Man, I think, is duking it out with the Vision in the middle of the, and it went for like 35 or 40 or 45,000. I don't know what the exact. And I was thinking, oh, this is really good. It's Iron Man, but it's not like Fantastic Four or something. And I was thinking like 40 grand, and I'm like, I can't really spend 40 grand. And I remember I was on the road when the live action happened, and I stopped to get a sandwich. I'm like, I should check the auction prices and see how things did. So $92,000 for this cover, and the Invaders cover was like $93,000, and then that Frank Runner Doctor Strange cover, $400,000. I mean, the last things I saw for 400 grand, the Green Lantern Green Arrow 76 cover, the Dark Knight #2 cover. I mean, those were rarefied key moments in comic history. I'm not disparaging Brunner or Doctor Strange. God damn. I mean, I was like, is this the new?
It was issue 1. I mean, come on.
What's that?
Issue 1 adds at least a 0 on there or something, right?
And that's fair. And I get it. And I don't know the Brenner market. And I was never a huge.
Well, I think what we're seeing this a lot in the hobby more is the people picking up art for first appearances. And I think first issues. So the things that fuel comic buyers, wanting to get those first appearance books and everything has been spilling over into the comic art collecting hobby for a while. And so that now those books have, or those pages from those books have that same kind of air of superiority to, the next issue's pages.
And I can dig that, but like I said, the last things I saw for 400 grand was like the Dark Knight 2 cover. What's more iconic than except the Dark Knight 1 cover or the Green Arrow 76 cover? I mean, that's like the beginning of the bronze. I mean, that image is burned into my head, that 76 cover. And then, I knew the Doctor Strange 1 cover, but I was still like, is this how it is now? I mean, even 70s Kirby, great covers. That Invaders cover is incredible. Granted, Thor, and that Iron Man cover, I thought was, primo, great covers. But 90 grand, I mean, that Avengers cover was like 40, and you had like Cap and Scarlet Witch and Wonder Man and Vision, and it's like, I don't get it. I mean, I'm not into the hobby like a lot of the dealers are and a lot of the hardcore collectors. And, I don't follow it as closely. I'm certainly not as closely as you. And, but I was just, and then, and I'm not even talking about the other stuff that hammered in that auction. I kind of went like, okay, I told my dad about it the next day. And he's like, you should start following newer artists and whatnot. And I agree, but it's, when you grow up in the 80s, again, okay, boomer, but it's like, it's hard to find stuff I can get into. Like I got into Burns' X-Men and Miller's Daredevil and Watchmen. I mean, that's like, for me, it just doesn't get any, and Kirby, obviously it doesn't get any better than that. So it's hard for me to, I know David Aja, I think his name, Hawkeye. Is that the guy who does, and Lee Weeks are like really, people love those guys, Tom King. Yeah. But it's, the only thing I read recently was Saga. And I remember I was reading it going, man, I saw a page of Lion Cat and I went, God, I got to find that page of art. I can't wait to find this. And so I went on Karmic Art lists. I'm like, all right, Fiona Staples, she's going to be my next person I'm going to start collecting. And somebody's like, I got some sour news for you, buddy. You're not going to get a page of Saga art anytime soon. Damn it.
Very true.
Yeah, well, maybe a commission. I heard she doesn't even do commissions either. But.
So why don't we've got a couple Millers lined up since you were mentioning that. So why don't we show these two?
Oh, I got them at the same time. So.
All right. This is the cover to 159.
That is, yes. And again, it was, I think it was 1986. I was at San Diego Comic-Con with my dad and a friend of mine named Steve. Actually, I haven't seen him literally since that Comic-Con. He worked at the Comic Book Nook, actually, and we got to talking, and I'm like, my dad's taking me down for Comic-Con. Why don't you come down and, we'll hang out and go see it. And I was walking through the dealer's room. It was literally the last day of Comic-Con, Sunday. My dad was kind of ready to go, and we were all pretty much done. We'd made our purchases and whatnot. And I bought, I walked past, first I bought this, it was a stunt pistol from Logan's Run, a deep sleep pistol, which is this, I still have it. It's actually this stupid little pistol. And I remember I got it for $30. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And we're leaving. And I walk past a booth and I see that out of the corner of my eye. And later on, I got to know Albert a little bit better, and we were talking, and he's like, that was my booth. You got it from me. And he wanted $400 for it. And I'm like, oh, I had $600 in my pocket at the time. I don't know how I had so much money. That year, I think my birthday was right around Comic-Con in that year. And I always get a bunch of money back then from friends and family, family basically. And they knew I'm going to Comic-Con, and, it's like, I just, allowances. And I was selling some books back and forth at the Comic Book Nook. I had a few things that they had kind of a nice little, they'll pay me like, half or a quarter of what it's worth. But anyway, I had about $600, and I went, man, sold. I remember my dad was like, so I had it under my arm, and like 50 feet away, I do not remember this at any point during this. We were there all 4 days, or maybe we were only there 2 days. I can't remember. But there was this huge booth and it was like 2 or 3 of those old wooden tables, and then at a right angle, 2 or 3 more, all put together. It was over on the sort of south, or the southeastern side, almost where I got the world's finest cover, but up and back a little bit. And there was just stacks of art. I mean, it was like a fever dream today. I mean, there must have been, 6 stacks or 7 stacks, and then the booth turned, and then there was another 6 or 7 stacks, and a ton of people there. And I was on Facebook, and I think it was probably Mitch who was the dealer. Mitch doesn't explicitly remember it, but he was Jansen's rep at the time, he said. And it definitely wasn't Scott Free, because he would have he would have mentioned it for sure. And Scott didn't actually rep Miller until 87, I think. And I do remember being at Scott's booth back in 87 and 88. I don't remember the Dark Knight pieces, but I remember the Superboy Welcome to Smallville Boy Superville cover that he did. It was very unusual. It was very unusual because the logo was at the bottom of the cover.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he wanted a fair amount of money for it, like $600 or $700 or $800. And I'm like, but anyway, I go right to one of the stacks of art that wasn't, there was nobody at, because there was every stack had somebody looking through it. And and I'll never forget it, because it was every page was a Frank Miller Daredevil page. Every single page in the stack. It was a stack like this tall, and it was all interiors from all periods of Daredevil, not just the later or the earlier. But I can't remember specific pages. I wish I could, but I do vividly remember that the cover to 170 was there, the Kingpin Month Style one, and the cover to 170, the Power Man Iron Fist cover, I think it's 178. And if it was Mitch, I remember him talking to this one guy, and the guy pulls out the Wolverine #4 cover he had. He's like, I got over here. Yeah, I just got this for $800. Because I was a big fan of the Wolverine miniseries. And that picture with all the comics around me, you can see the miniseries right behind me. And I had $200 left, and I went to I asked him how much he wanted. $600 for the 170, and he wanted $700 for the 178 cover. I couldn't afford it. And then at the bottom of the stack somewhere was a manila envelope with the Marvel address. I can't remember if it was Klaus's, probably Miller's. I don't remember what was on it, but I remember it was the Marvel. I open it up, and there's the entire 187 issue of Daredevil. I don't explicitly remember going through every single page, but cover was obviously in there. The double page splash that Scott Williams actually owns. I found that out just recently. And then I seem to remember like going through the next 3 or 4 pages. It was all in order. I could have sat there and read the 187 issue, from the original art. And he wanted $2,200 for the entire thing. And I think I asked my dad half-heartedly if he would, and he's like, no. You spent $400 on this other weird thing. And he was like, are you really going to buy more? I mean,
you already spent $400 on one piece. Now you're gonna try to buy a whole book.
Right, exactly. I mean, he got it later, obviously. I mean, I was kind of a hyperactive kid, and I collected everything. Like the Return of the Jedi Burger King glasses. Well, I got to collect 2 complete sets of those. And, the Star Trek 3, I think they were Burger King glasses. Well, I got to have a set or 2 of those, so I was that kid. I was always, mint condition issue of whatever. I got to get that. Anyway, so I asked if it was Mitch or whoever it was, and he said $200. And the funny thing is, because I was that kid, and this actually figures into a story later, I started like arguing with him about the price, and I got him to sell it to me for $190. And I walked out of con with like $10 to my name. And the weird thing about it was
dinner with your dad.
What's that?
I said you get to have dinner with your dad.
It's like I could go to McDonald's and buy dinner from my friend Steve and my dad, exactly. And the weird thing is I didn't have buyer's remorse, because I never spent $600 in one place ever in my life. This would have been 86, so I probably was 15 maybe. And I walked out of there, and I was actually I didn't have buyer's remorse for it. I was like, I'm really happy because I used to read these Daredevil issues. That's all I read. I mean, I would sit there and I'd trace panels. I mean, I would read them over and over and over. I mean, the way Miller drew Daredevil's face is unlike anybody who ever drew, that really kind of elongated face with the sunken in eyes. And, I mean, Miller was the first guy who would picture Daredevil in all black with red highlights, like the red gloves. There's like panels. And then I think that's his costume in the comics now. And Miller was the one who did that the first time. And I remember thinking that's a cool look for them. They should make that his costume. I know in the 170s, I think he shows up in these weird, Miller playing with light and shadows and whatnot. And fast forward to 2000, when I started to get online and start to see the art, my buddy, I was working at a production company, a little boutique production company, and my buddy was really into eBay. eBay, I don't think had been around very long. And he had a whole light area set up, staged, because he was really into buying and selling toys. And he's like, do you want me to throw anything up there on eBay? Do you have anything? I'm like, you know what? Just put this cover on there. I'm curious to see what it'll go for. I wasn't really ever intending to sell it. I know that's wrong. Yeah, it's funny because he got the the negative review because it was on his account. But I'm like, all right. My estimate at the time was like $800 to $1,000 because this would have been 99 or 2000, the absolute latest. I think it was 2000, and he was going to do all these shoot all this stuff on a Friday night. Saturday, like right around dusk, he calls me, and he never called me at home. He's like, dude, your cover's up to like $9,500, and that kind of money for original art. My mind was blown. What I didn't know is he'd set the reserve at $10,000 and not $3,000. So I'm like, cancel the auction. I got to find out. Like, I think I have a really bizarre idea or about what original art is worth. And later on, right around there, David Mandel reached out to me, and he's like, you should, why don't you come over to my house and, maybe we can do a trade or something. And I don't know if I knew who he was or about his collection, really, I should say. I'm pretty sure I didn't. I don't know. I don't remember. Anyway, I went over there, and we all know about that collection. I mean, it was.
Oh, yes, we do.
I remember walking into. I don't think he lives where he lives now, because I don't think he was married. I don't know anything about him, honestly. But it was like one of the highlights of my original art collecting life was to go in there. I mean, you literally couldn't see the paint on the walls because it was like framed stuff stacked together like Tetris blocks. And I, out of respect, I won't reveal the stuff that he had, but I was like, I saw stuff that I was like, I can't believe what I'm even looking at. And he had a binder. I was looking through this binder, and he had, there's 3 covers I was going to try and go for a trade with. And he had the Alpha Flight 17. I'm a huge Alpha Flight fan because that was for my specific age, because we missed the X-Men, Burn X-Men. We all got people my age got to read. That was our first Burn book we could start from issue 1. And Alpha Flight was, insanely popular in 83, 84, showing up in Machine Man and all their Alpha Flight appearances. And he had the 17 cover, which is the Wolverine getting punched by Vindicator. And he had, I think it was the Clayface Marshall Rogers detective cover from the 70s. Batman's holding a woman's dress, and she's like pouring out of it because her flesh has been turned into slime. And then he had the Justice League 5 cover. I'm a big Kevin Maguire Justice League fan. That was one of the seminal books in my childhood, or late teens. And it's the One Punch Batman book where Batman punches him out. And I'm like, I wonder if he would trade for all this stuff. And I felt like, no, I kind of felt like, I don't think he's going to go for this. And I never even brought it up to him. And we never made any sort of trade. But thank you, David, for inviting me over. That was one of the honest to God highlights, was seeing something.
Yeah, it would be the highlight of most collectors, time in the hobby, just to get to see any of David's collection in person.
Oh, it was, that's up here That's one of those permanent treasured memories, that's for sure.
So hey, before we move to the next artwork, there was a question Marcus had. He wanted to know if that artwork had been framed, and is that why?
Yes. Yes, I definitely. I was going to pull it out for you, but I guess you have it.
Well, yeah, I could show it again because yeah, I was
So
thinking, but I wasn't sure because I was looking at the detail scan that I have here, and it looks that way, but I couldn't tell.
unfortunately, yes, my dad did that as a Christmas present one year, and again, I had no idea what this stuff was worth. I knew it was worth at least $200 because that's what I paid for it. And it seemed like, I remember my friend who was a big Daredevil fan in the early days of the comic book Nook. His book was Daredevil. Mine was collecting the burned X-Men issues, although I was a big Miller fan. And he's like, wow, that's you have that cover? And that was like 1985. Yes, my dad had it framed one year for Christmas, and it hung in a room that was fairly I don't think it was direct sunlight, but it was a white room, and there was direct sunlight going into the room, and so it was there for like 10 years. Even after
That's
I
about all
moved.
it takes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think 3 years of that, but it just got baked. And as a matter of fact, when I think it was right after I put it on eBay, and maybe after I met David, I took it to. I just taken the 158 cover down to a framer because I was going to get it framed. And after I found out, I ran down to the framer because I still had it in the cover when it went up on eBay. It was still in the frame, as a matter of fact. And I like, let's get this out of the frame for one thing. So I'm like, and I was telling the framer and I were talking. I'm like, man, I hope this isn't as sun damaged as I think it was, because I remember when I bought it was in a manila return folder. That art was in bright white condition when I originally. It was perfect. And the framer, I still remember, he's like, oh, it doesn't look too bad, and he was and then I had my back to him or something. He's like, oh, it's a little worse than I thought it was. And then I looked at it, I was just like, but I mean, what can I say?
Right. Well, I mean, they can be cleaned. They can it can be repaired. But yeah, at the end of the day,
I'm not going to do it. I'm making. I want all my art to survive me, and I'm going to make sure that if anything does happen to me, it goes into other people's hands, because I love this stuff. At the bottom, I mean, not just mine, but original art in general is a I love this stuff, and I don't want to see it get destroyed. So whoever wants to do the conservation after my time is more than welcome to it. So yes, I wish I hadn't done that, clearly, and but I had no idea. The Batman cover, the 291 cover, was in a frame for years, but thankfully it was in a real dark area. And it's funny because last thing I should say is Todd Rice, who originally owned the cover before I got it, he owned it throughout the decade of the 80s. He had it framed, and he posted a picture of it in his frame in the 1980s on the original art Facebook board. We were like, and it actually looks okay for the amount of it was framed for like 20 years, the Batman cover. So what can I say?
Well, we all make mistakes, right? That's we're working on some educational videos to make sure that people don't make those same mistakes in the future.
And trust me, my art is kept in complete darkness. I want to get them all as high-res scans, and I'm going to frame the scans and put them up, I think. But yes, my art is definitely never sees the light of day ever, pretty much, at this point. I learned my lesson.
All right. Well, let's now we're going to look at a couple Kirby pieces from your collection too. And the cover to CAF 212. This one's awesome.
My holy grail. I still look at this one and I can't believe I own it. I did find out in the last year where the entire book is. I won't say, but I don't think anybody's ever going to see it. It's just the alpha and the omega to me. I will never ever. If I ever sell this piece, then something has gone very, very wrong in my life. But I'm very, very happy to own this one. It's funny. Story behind it. I looked for this piece for 20 years, and I dreamt of having it. I think about right around 2000 when I started getting back in the original art world, or into it for the first time. Because I always think I inherited the other pieces from when I was a kid, because I had no idea it was.
You did luck out.
Yeah, a little bit. But I started looking for it, and I would go to these conventions. I just wanted a Captain America Kirby 70s cover. That's all I wanted. And there was a period where they just did not show up. They weren't at auction. They were probably trading hands between private collectors, but I was not part of the rarefied crowd, or the, what do they call it, the cabal, right?
Well, but it was kind of like that back in the day. I always tell my first experience with original art collecting was not being able to sit at the table where the guys with the Kirbys were.
Oh yeah.
And it's not that, but I just felt like I couldn't walk over there, so I just stayed in the room with the cheap pieces while the other guys did the trading, and that's where the good art was. So it was a thing back in the day.
Absolutely. And and I still didn't really understand the hobby, even in like 99 and 2000 when I started getting. So what had happened was, it was sometime in the late 2000s. I was doing a lot of work in post-production, and I had a little bit more money at that point. I started making a serious effort to try and find it. I mean, I had been looking for it. And then, what's that guy who has all the old comic art ads from the buyer's guide? I can't remember his LB Jeffries. Is that his name? I can't remember his name. He's got a whole website, and I found the cover in that. It's one of the ads is this cover, and it's like $800 or something. I mean, it's just something insane. And anyway, it finally occurred to me, because I'd been on the Comic Art L list almost since the beginning. I don't know when it began. I think I joined in 99 or 2000, and I put I put a post up probably in 08 or 09. And there was a pretty well-known collector who had it, and he actually reached out, and he acknowledged he said, "Yeah, I got it, but I'm not going to sell it right now. Sorry about that." I'm just like, well, at least I know it's out there. It's not, in a trash bin, and it's being taken care of. And then back it was 2013. Comic Link would send out those mailers. It was like on a heavy poster paper type of thing, and they were like 2 pages. I think now they're like a 30-page magazine, but they would just send it as like a mailer. I don't know, I was in my house somewhere, and I had the mail, and I opened it up, and I saw this cover, and I literally screamed like a little girl. And I even remember, I'm like, I'm going to own this cover. And I even remember getting to leave work early so I could be at home when the original, the art was going live, and I set a really high reserve on it, and I got it honestly for way under what I would have paid the collector, to be honest, and what I set my reserve for. In fact, it's hard to be objective. I think it's one of the greatest 70s bronze Kirby covers he ever did. I mean, everything about it is high drama. You got the skull, perfect. Captain America. There's a Fantastic Four cover, a Fantastic 200 cover, which is, but there's not too many covers, in my opinion, even objectively. And it's hard because I grew up with that comic, but I just look at that cover and I think that everything about it is perfect. Even the inking is just incredible. Verporten, John Verporten. I asked Royer years later, because I went and looked at it on the database. It's got all the covers, Comic Cover Gallery, and they didn't know who the inker was. So I reached out to Royer, and Royer said, "It's not me, and I think it's Verporten." So I went, "All right, it's Verporten. I'm sold." I love that cover like so much. I'm so happy I have it.
Well, it's in the right collector's hands, that's for sure.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Let's see, and another Kirby cover, this one to 213.
Yes, this actually appeared on, again, it was the same. I didn't know who owned it, and I didn't actually go looking for this one. I think it was the same collector who owned 212, because I seem to remember somewhere, it may have been the Facebook board or maybe somewhere, there was a picture of an Atoya binder, and there was a Kirby cover, and then at the very corner you could see this cover, because you could see the either 213 number, or I recognized it. This cover was really important to me because it was the first. I missed it when it came out when I was 7. I was obsessed with Captain America 212, but for some reason I never found 213 on the stands. And for my birthday, when I was about 7 or 8, my next door neighbor got me this little stack of comics. I opened the box, and it was the first comic on the top of the box. And you have to remember, back in 77, 78, there were no trades or no reprints, and I certainly didn't know what a comic book store was. So if you missed a story, even in the 80s, I didn't read all the Frank Miller Daredevils because they didn't reprint them until years later. So I never knew how that crazy cliffhanger in 212 ended. And so this was a real seminal cover in my life. And again, I was sitting at home. I brought the mail in. It was Comic Link's mailer. I opened it up, and it was right there. I was like, "Oh my God!" And and this one I got the year before, and I just thought, all right, I'm never going to find the 212 cover. It's never going to come out of this black hole. But man, I have a shot at the 213 cover, and I still think in retrospect, it went for way under what it should have gone for at the time. I got very, very lucky on Comic Link for it. People just didn't bid that much on this cover. And it was my first Jack Kirby Captain America cover. And I remember reading the book. In fact, I'm going to I just want to tell this little story. So in 2016, I was at the IDW booth years ago. It was 16 or 17. I didn't own the 211 cover yet. And I'm talking to this guy. And the guy, it turns out he was an old art dealer from the 80s. And he's high up in IDW. Who's Scott? Is it
Scott Doonbeer?
Doonbeer. I can never remember his last name. And we started talking. He's like, I want to do a artist edition of Kirby 70s CAF covers. And I was like, God, I would kill to get that. And so we talked about, he said, can you come down to San Diego? We'll bring you down, scan the covers in. And, because I think the 212 and the 212's cover, I think is kind of one of the really good covers. And now the 193 cover's out there somewhere. And so I forgot about it. I got home. I don't remember him telling me, there's like a time, we're on a schedule. I just was like, man, I can't wait to see this happen. Got home. It was a few months later, and I'm like, oh my God, I forgot to contact that guy. So I went through my stuff. I had his card, and I tried to contact him on, I think, the CGC board, and no response. And then I emailed him at IDW, and I couldn't get a response there. And I think I even emailed him on Facebook. I may have found no response there. So I don't know what happened, if he got upset with me or I missed some sort of deadline. But Scott, if you're listening, let's make this happen.
I email regularly. I will remind him of this event.
Please do. And I will even tell you this. I have a Captain America splash from that era that hasn't been seen. My dad bought it for me in 1986, put it in a frame. I will put it on CAF, but it hasn't been seen since it was sold in the 80s. It's the River of Death splash. I think it's from 208, as a matter of fact. It's got the monster.
Picture it, but go ahead.
It's got the monster rising out of the river, and you see Cap in the distance, and it's got the really cool that guy who did all the cool River of Death title. He had a real distinct style for the chapter titles, like River of Death, and I will scan that. You have 4 pieces. You could have I've got a grand format scanner. I can do it here at my house. Any DPI you want. And the 212 book, the entire book is out there. Maybe that guy, I'm sure he knows where it is. Maybe that guy will donate the book. It's like, please, I would love to see that. That's up there with the John Byrne X-Men artist edition. So, man, that would be a dream. Let me know.
All right, I am going to email Scott for you. Not a problem.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now here's speaking of John Byrne. I mean, here we can take a look at a very, very nice Superman cover.
Yeah, I wanted a Superman cover for a long time. What's weird is the Superman covers, they were like the cheap things, that you could get for a long time of John Byrne. And I was thinking, God, why are they so cheap? It's like John Byrne's prime era. His inking was just on point back. Everything about him were great. and this just randomly showed up on Comic Link, and it was like last year, I think. It wasn't that long ago, and I put in a bid. I was on the road when the actual live part of the auction, when it was counting down. So I put in this reserve. It was high-ish. I had no clue what this stuff even sold for, because, you know, if everybody remembers, these covers were selling in the 2000s, and it definitely in the teens, for like $6,000, $9,000. I mean, they were really affordable, you know, for what they are, you know. And so I put in this bid, and I was about 75% sure I was going to lose it, and I won. I was like, oh my God. And I have a good friend of mine who collects, we're both big Byrne fans. And he's like, you son of a, he's like, he was like, I bid on the thing and I had outbid you, and my internet connection went down at the very last minute, or his computer had locked up and it wouldn't accept my bid. And he had bid like much higher than me. And it just, as sheer stroke of luck, I wound up getting the cover out from under it. So sorry, Tony.
And that's true. I remember those covers were they were hard sells. You could get them for around $2,000, $2,500 for the longest time. And I never understood why. I mean, I wasn't a Superman fan, so it wasn't a Byrne thing that I was going to buy. I mean, I read the books, I bought them all because I loved his run on it, but I wasn't going to buy any art from there. But yeah, I thought that was odd too. I mean, there's
it was weird. There were two that I think changed the whole curve of those prices. Both came on Comic Link a couple years before. In fact, Tony and I were talked a lot about one of them, because we both were like, man, we should have bought this cover. It was the first Action comic that Byrne did, where he's holding Wonder Girl. I think it's the Teen Titans Superman one. I don't remember the issue. And it went for like $25,000. And at the time, I was like, that's insane. I mean, especially when you could buy, you know, the other ones for like $6,000, $9,000, $10,000. And I really regret, because that was a super nice cover. And there was a splash. It was from, I think, Superman 3, where he's jumping down and Jimmy Olsen's summoning him with the watch. And it's this beautiful drawing that Byrne did of Superman. He's like landing. It went for like $10,000, and I was like, I think the prices are climbing. And it was one. The splash that ended, where he's got where he's standing and the cape is billowing. It's like the end page of maybe the Man of Steel series. That one went on right around the same time, and that one went for a lot of money too. I'm blanking on but it's a pretty well-known Superman splash. It's not the one where he's flying into the air, but it's the one where he's like, it's a full pin-up quality shot, and he's talking about defending. I don't remember what it is, but beautiful, you know. And when those three kind of hit, it was like, oh, I think the price, you're not going to find them for $6,000 and $9,000 anymore. They're going to be like, you know, what I paid, you know, I don't know, a different price, you know.
Sure.
It is what it is.
Well, here, I'm going to show another Byrne artwork here, since we saw that one. This is one I'm sure many people remember. This is I mean, I love this Byrne cover. I mean, one of my, I mean, there's many favorites in the early Alpha Flight books, but this, this one's great.
And you know, Byrne's Alpha Flight means a lot to me. I mean, it's way up there. And, you know, as I'm sure everybody remembers, these covers went for nothing. I mean, it was so weird to me, because, you know, you'd see the prices for the X-Men stuff and for other stuff. And then the Alpha Flight stuff, I still remember being the underbidder on the issue where, you know, Robot Guardian is holding Snowbird up. I think the Donnellys wound up with it, and it was like $4,000. And I went, oh, well, you know, that's that, you know, it's $4,000. That's all it's really, you know. And you know, Alpha Flight 12 was one of the biggest books in my life. I think a lot of people our age, that was a major event in our comic reading life right there. And, you know, when 13 came out, I was just, you know, I couldn't get home fast enough to read that issue. And I mean, he was just, and then I found out like 10 years ago, Byrne, I hated doing Alpha Flight. I had no ideas for the story. I really didn't want to do it. Didn't really like the team. They were just designed to fight the X-Men. Hated everything about him. Like, God, he was just doing, and when I remember my friends and I just loving these books. In '85, my buddy Robert went down to San Diego Comic-Con with me, and he bought the Alpha Flight 7 cover that year in '85, I think for like $50, $75. And I remember going over to his house in 1985. It was on. My friend Robert was this incredible artist for his age. He had stuff down that just people. I thought for sure he was gonna get into comics, and I literally have never seen or heard from him since the '80s. But I remember going over to it. He had it propped up on a chair, and we put it on his table, and we were literally just like look inches away from it, just looking at every single line. It's the one with Aurora, and she's in her civilian clothes, and she's got the thug on the ground in front of him, the angle slightly canted, and North Star's in the background. He's also in his civilian uniform. And there's a lot of pencil marks I noticed on this one and on the 7 cover. And I was always like, to this day, I feel like my friend drew one of those arts. It's nothing. He paid $50 for it back then. But this cover, it came on Comic Link in 2009, and I look back, it was only 10, 11 years ago, but 2009 might as well have been 1975 as far as art collecting goes, because the price has changed so much in the last 11 years. But I'll never forget, this cover came on Comic Link, and it was like one of the seminal comics in my reading life was 12 and 13. And also, whoever owned this cover, I'm pretty sure owned and put on Comic Link, in fact, it was the next listing, it was the team shot ad, The One Won't Survive. I think somebody said it's on the back of Marvel Age #2, and it's the one where it's the team is standing in the circle and the whole background is basically black except for the circle, and it's Guardian and it's an incredible shot, and it was the promo for issue 12. And I was like, man, I can really go for one of these. I can go all the way and get one of them, but I can't, I just don't have it to go for both. And I really debated it. I was like, they're both incredible pieces. And I had to go for this one just because I remembered the story. It was a cover. I vividly remember reading the issue and buying it off the stand. And it was Wolverine Byrne doing Wolverine in the 80s and his great period. The inking is, on point. I love everything about this cover. So I was like, man, I'm gonna have to let the other one go. I mean, now I would have just begged and borrowed to get that team shot as well. But I'm just very, very happy to have this in my collection. I'm thrilled that I probably will never get another Alpha Flight cover, I don't think, at this point in my life. So, for me, it's like, what a one to have, even though none of the Alpha Flight team is actually on the cover. It's like the only issue.
Right.
Except the next one where I think Heather's being pulled under the ocean by the tentacle monster, whatever it was.
Well, if that's the only one you're going to have, it's a good one. You've got nothing to feel bad about.
I'm stoked. It's definitely one of the pieces of my collection I love.
All right. Well, this is a little bit different, but incredible nonetheless.
Thank you. This is my. People say you shouldn't overuse the term Holy Grail, but this is my Mona Lisa. Love and Rockets really changed my life for a number of reasons. I was the same age as Maggie, and still am, because Jaime's aging the characters, which is just a wild thing. You never really see that, especially with a book that's been published continuously, or mostly continuously for 40 years, something like that. Anyway, I just fell in love with, I got into the punk rock scene when I was in my early 20s. And I words can't put in how much I love and Rockets, and how, I mean, it just was it was like the Cap 212 cover. I mean, this book meant everything to me, and it still does. Those guys are, the absolute rock stars, I mean, to me. And I bought this issue off I was going to buy issue 22 when I was 16. I remember there's a scene in issue. It was the death of Speedy. It's like the greatest issues that Jaime ever produced. Those 3 issues. And there's a scene where Maggie's talking to Speedy, and she's got a thought bubble like, "I really want to rape you right now." And at 16 years old, I'm like, I just can't process this. Girls. I'm used to superhero books. That the art was so cool. So when I was 18 or 19, I saw this issue and I picked it up, and I've been looking for this art, God, since the 99, 2000, when I first got into original art collecting. Scott Free invited me to this Rhino record signing in 2003, and Jaime and Gilbert were there, and they weren't signing. They were just there. I don't know if they were supposed to, and it all kind of fell apart. But it's one of the greatest days I ever had, because Jaime was really open and kind, and somebody, and I think Scott introduced me to him, because, I was like, this guy is like meeting, John Lennon and Elvis Presley, to me, it's like Kirby, and he was, Jaime and I talked for like an hour, and we talked about his original art. I remember he told me, man, that guy really, really undervalued his art. I feel, really pretty bad, because he gave me a price list. I still have his 2003 price list. And I remember doing the math, and I could have owned 8 or 9 of his covers for less than $5,000. And it was like, they were mostly the trade covers from the first 50 issues. It was like 2 pages front and back, single spaced, of the stuff he owned. You could have just, if you'd gone in there for 20 grand, you would have had everything he would have probably owned. And he was telling me he had sold the trade cover for the first Music for Mechanics #1. It's the one where it's Daffy and Izzy and Maggie and Hopi on the police line. He's like, yeah, I sold it for $60. I was like, oh, dude. But anyway, he told me, I was asked him about this piece, of course. I was like, yeah, I sold it 3 years ago. And it was the one piece where I'm like, you have pieces where you're like, I love this piece, I need, but this was the one I'm like, I'm going to own this piece one day. I will do whatever it takes. I don't care what I have to pay for it. This is going to be in my collection. And it didn't occur to me until like 5 years ago, maybe I should look on CAF for it. And it was there. It wasn't even in a black hole collection. It was right there in somebody's collection, right up front. It's like, oh my God. And I was probably responsible for half the views the guy had. And he had a ton of views on it at that point. I think he had it on CAF for a while. And I was at a Starbucks one night, and I was just hopped up on caffeine, and I made him an offer. And he's like, that's a good offer, but I'm going to keep it for now. And then I made him a really kind of exceptional offer. And I got like, here's my email address. Let's talk. And then did the deal. I was like, I think I paid so high that I probably changed the curve of what Love and Rockets pieces were worth at one point. I didn't even think it was still worth what I paid for it, but man, I don't even care.
You just wanted it. You had to have it.
I had to have it. It's like other than maybe the #1 cover, I think I would take it over the #1 cover too. I mean, it's like one of the greatest pieces of my collection. So thank you, Ben. I appreciate it. What can I say? It's yeah. I'm glad I got that.
That's how markets are made.
Exactly. After I got that and the 212 cover, I kind of lost a lot of interest in collecting, because I'm like, I got really the pieces I always wanted, and everything else is going to be #3 on the list pretty much. I can't love a Burn FF cover and Alpha Flight 12 or something, but if I never get them, I don't care. I mean, I'm thrilled. So yeah,
it's a good place to be as an art collector.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Let's see, we got a few more pieces to look at. So let me pull up another one here, related in its own way.
But yeah, I'm glad you brought that one up. I that was a real strong piece for me because I got into the band, the album that's the guys holding in the front, the Adolescents, and the album right behind the album that's in between that one, which is actually the Christian Death Only Theater of Pain album. I wound up being in the band with the guy who basically wrote, he was in both of those bands, and he wrote a lot of the material on both of those albums. His name is Rick Agnew, and he's kind of a really well-known Orange County punk rock legend. And I actually played the Frontier. I was in his band, and we played that show, the Frontier 30th anniversary show. It was at the Echoplex in 2011. And I remember back in 2000, there's another one that's a poster that's a little different. It's a woman running with a bunch of records, and she's got a bunch of the bands that were on. Frontier is a record label that all 4 of those albums that came out on. Very, very famous record label. And I've been looking for that piece, and it was on this thing called Comic Art Collective, which they specialize, in like Dan Close and like the alternative guys. And I just missed buying that piece. and I still haven't seen it, and I'm still really looking for it. But I wound up thinking about this a few years ago, and I was like, I wonder if Jaime has it. And so I kind of blindly emailed him. We were gonna. One of the big misses in my life was my other big Love and Rockets grail is the cover to The Death of Speedy, and it's so Speedy on the cover, and he's got a halo around him. It's incredible. It's the trade paperback cover, and I was gonna buy it, and then between the time I approached him at San Diego, because I see him every year, and I bow down, get a sketch, and one year I said, would you take? And I offered him some money, and then by the time I approached it, I emailed him. He'd sold it in between the two times. But yeah, so
not what you wanted to hear.
What's that?
Not what you wanted to hear.
No, I was, it is what it is. He got a good price for it. I'm just thrilled. I'm thrilled he's getting good money, and because his art, every line that guy draws is the line that's supposed to be drawn. He's one of those guys. I mean, he's one of the few people. I'm reading an Alex Toth interview, and he's just it's with Gary Groth in one comics journalist. Toth is just ripping into everybody, and Groth throws out Hernandez's name. He's like, yeah, he's pretty good. Coming from him, that's like slavish praise basically. But I love that guy so much. Anyway, I approached Jaime. I just blind emailed him, and he's like, yeah, I happen to have it. And what's funny? I have the piece right here, actually, and because that one's kind of a weird piece. For some reason, I posted it with the sticker, because I can't really find what it was actually published as. I've never seen the poster. But the interesting thing, Jaime used almost all of his pieces have like aborted starts to Love and Rockets issues. And this is actually a super early issue of Love and Rockets. I think it's like issue, I'm guessing, because I haven't gone through and read them in a long time. It's like issue 10 or something. And I was like, wow, he's got it kind of laid out. He's got all the dialogue in place, and then he's got sketches, and he just, I don't like it, or whatever the reason was. But he did. I have a few of his pieces, not a ton, and I've got on the back of another one is like this incredible story he started writing about this female robot set in the future, and he just abandoned it. But yeah, so that's the piece as it appears. And it was really cool because, again, I was in a band with the guy who was in a couple of the record albums that were on there, and so yeah, it's one of my prized possessions for my punk rock days, being in bands.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally cool. I mean, and again, I think you're very fortunate. You've kind of stumbled into some of these things and been at the right place at the right time to get these choice pieces in your collection, and then or you've just gone all out in auctions. I mean, so you've kind of run the gamut.
There's pieces that I just go, I just got to try for these, because we can't buy it all. I'm definitely not rich. Who can afford $92,000 for a 70s?
You have your own library behind you, though. I mean,
oh well, but I've been collecting trades. I worked at a comic book store, so I had the discount, and I've been buying, and I've been going to San Diego since 1983. And, I don't really buy or read comics much, but when I do go to San Diego, I sort of give myself leave to just buy any trades that I really want. And that's going to be what I'm going to read for the year. That's how I discovered Saga. And that's how I discovered, it's a really funny one. Sex, the one about I'm blanking on the name. It was really popular for a while. I can't remember. But these various titles, a lot of the Image stuff, and so I just kind of I bought that stuff. But this library goes back 25 years, so it's just I've been collecting. I was going to say I wanted Todd Hignite actually reached out to me and offered.
Samuel mentioned it. Sex Criminals.
Sex Criminals, thank you.
Yep, there you go. Yep,
which was really cool.
Thank you, everybody. I was drawing a blank on that one too.
I'm like, I know the name, but I haven't read it since I got the trades when it came out, and it was really clever, and just a number of just really cool. I try and read the stuff, but I don't know. I can't get really into comics. I mean, I will always love comics. They're in my DNA, but I just don't read like I used to. But I was just going to say, Todd Hignite actually reached out, I think, when I got one, and offered me a really cool piece that I I was like, I don't know if I can really afford it, but I bought it because he didn't offer it for sale. It's in my CAF gallery, and it's the cover to volume 4, #1, and it's Maggie and Hopi sitting on her lap, and it's a really cool, like, just shot of the two of them. So I think I'm pretty happy with my, Jaime Hernandez collection at this point. I think I don't know if I'll ever get any more Jaime Hernandez pieces, but yeah. But thank you.
Well, again, you're in a very satisfied place. That's just not something.
Yeah, no, I
most collectors feel like they're ever going to get to. So that's a good place for you to be. But there's this next piece is one I guess I could have brought it up earlier because I think you mentioned it, but let me show it here. So this was that Flash cover. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to have it. I saw it in 2017. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about the date, but I think it was. Bashara had it, and usually most of the dealer, I don't really almost Albert Moy. A lot of my collection comes from him. I love Albert. I mean, he's a great dealer. He's my favorite dealer in the hobby. But generally, I don't buy too much from dealers. I don't know why. I kind of like the auctions because you see stuff coming out of the blue and it's like, wow, you never see that. But man, I remember walking in. It was one of the only years I managed to get in on Wednesday, preview night. And I walked up to the booth and I saw, it was like the cover to the first comic I ever owned. We all want the cover to the first comic we ever owned.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like, okay, how much and what do I have to do? And I got it. I had to have it. It was, I just had to have it. And I got it, and I think at the time, I probably paid a little high for it, but now it's probably, I think the price is kind of evened out, and no regrets. I would love to find the cover before that one and the cover after that one. I'm sure they're in a black hole. The Flash issues of the 250s, there's like 5 of them that are like holy grails to me. If I never get them, I never get them. But the one after this one is so grotesque. It's like it's like flat. And at the end of this one, the elongated man as the Mulder character beats Flash into this giant like Jello substance, and the cover of the next issue is the Flash literally melting. He's and the elongated man standing with his hands behind his hips in a different costume, and it's just like, that's another cover I used to stare at for years and go, wow, this is nuts. It was funny because there's no realism. As I remember in that issue, the way he gets regenerated back to normal is Iris finds him. They scoop him up and take him to a hospital, and Iris puts like a defibrillator on him, and then one punch and boop, he pops back into a human, perfectly proportioned person without any side effects, running around trying to, it was like those stories from the 1950s Superman and Flash comics. But another one that I'm super grateful to have. A lot of memories staring at that cover and the following cover as a 7 or 8 year old in my bedroom. So yeah, and it's funny, somebody just mentioned you could be in the Superman movie. Any ones with the banner that say you could be in the Superman movie, that was like the first month I ever collected comics. So whenever I see a comic with that banner, it's like immediately takes me back to that special time of like, oh, that weird kind of ugly, rub down type banner that they were using back in the day. But you could be in the Superman movie. But excuse me.
Well, it's like those what was it? The Marvel covers with you can win a Schwinn or whatever it was. All the little gimmicks that were out there to get you to pick up those books. You can't forget those growing up, right?
Well, I know, and of course, the issue X-Men 137 with the giant Toys R Us banner across.
Right, exactly.
Had it too, and then the Daredevil 166 had it too. It was like, God, whatever. At least you could be in the Super. It was only about this thin. It
That's
was really intrusive.
It wasn't as obnoxious.
It didn't push the art out of perspective. Because obvious. Burn Robotics has gone on about that goddamn banner at the top. We had to put on the cover. And Burn is a little, he's a little opinionated. I love him. I love him. He's in my DNA too.
Rick Welch mentions that Richard Pryor won the contest. So
Really?
I mean, he's joking. He's joking.
Oh, I don't. I have no idea who won the contest for the Superman movie. That would be a great little piece of trivia to like an article on some website somewhere and talk about the guy who
Somebody got it.
I can't read the comments. I'm sorry if I'm not addressing them. I cannot see without my glasses, and my computer's a little. I'm really. I think it's farsighted. I can't remember the term, but if it's like this far away from me, I'm totally blind, and then I can see everything to infinity past it. So,
right.
Sorry, guys.
That's
anyway,
okay. Well, I actually just got new glasses, and they're only for reading on the monitor because I can't see anything that's about 5 feet away. So I had to do it though because I'm in front of my monitor all the time. I was tired.
Oh yeah, and it's like it was weird. 4 years ago, my vision was perfect, and then suddenly, boom! I got one of those Judge Dredd editions at Comic-Con. Like I can't read the type. What's wrong with me? I cannot. Literally, even I can pull it. I can't.
I thought it was printed bad or something. Right?
I was nuts, and I'm like, oh yeah, my vision. I'm just old. I'm 51, so it is what it is.
We all have a shelf life.
Yeah.
Sure. So hey, this next artwork, I think we have something. You and I have something in common about this particular piece. That and we've emailed. I didn't realize we actually emailed once about it. Maybe like a couple years back, where you had said, "Oh, I have this cover that you used to own."
I vaguely remember that.
And I literally said the same thing to you that I said the other day. That of all the things that I sold when I had to sell some artwork back when I built my miniature golf course, this was the one.
Is that why? I was always wondering why you sold it.
It was.
I thought you sold it to
I mean, I sold like 3 burn X-Men pages. They didn't hurt as bad as this particular piece hurt.
Really?
And so I'll show it now, and because I've talked about this numerous times on the show before, that this is the one piece that I have the deepest regret from selling. And I guess I'm a huge Quietly fan, and getting the first and I bought this directly from Mitch.
Did you really?
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, I forget. I think it was.
I forgot about that. I almost bought a Quietly piece from. I'll tell that story later, but yeah, that's right. Mitch had all the Quietly stuff.
He did.
I remember talking to him
like
15 years ago about a piece, and I forgot that's where it all went, because he had all this All-Star Superman stuff, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
God,
and this was just such a fantastic cover. I mean, I still have pictures because I had this framed on my wall for the longest time, and
I'm impressed because I've always been impressed how white and perfect this cover is.
Oh yeah, no, it's immaculate and such a great image. And well, I know. I'm glad it's in your collection because I mean, it's the end of the day. Like I say, it was the one that hurt the most, and it was probably one of the last things I sold too, because I just kept thinking I'm going to raise enough money. I don't have to sell this one, and it was probably the last one I took off the wall and took out of the frame because it was the only one I didn't want to sell, but I felt. I knew it would help me get over the hurdle that I had in front of me, and it did, but yeah, the pain.
You do it when you got to do it, man.
Yeah, no, I know, and I've been lucky. I've picked up a few interior pages over time, and it's kind of made up for the sting a little bit. But back in the day when I had I think I probably had about 8 new X-Men covers, but this was my most cherished one.
Really? Did you have the Quietly ones?
I had, I had like 3 other covers by Quietly.
Which one? Do you want to say which ones, or?
God, I can't even remember the.
Did you have the white cream one?
No, I did
you
not
have
get
class
that one.
Picture?
I didn't have that one either, but I could have bought both of them. Because at that time though, I already had this one. I was like, you know what? I don't need another Quietly because the other 3 were pencils only.
They were. Oh no,
yeah.
I didn't know. I've never seen them before. The art form.
And but yeah, I had at that time, I think there were 2 Ethan Van Sciver covers. I had a Jimenez cover.
Oh yeah, this is great.
And I can't remember what the other one, but I sold them all. But this was the one that hurt the worst. But it's like we all go. Hopefully, most people never have to experience something like that. But again, I'm glad that you got it. It was. It's still sold for more than twice what I paid for it, and so I knew I was going to get my money back on it. But yeah, I look back on it. This is the one I will always shed a tear. But it's on CAF now, so
Yeah, I was, as an aside, I give my dad a lot of credit for because there were times where I was going to sell the Daredevil cover, the 158 one or the 159,
Mhm.
and my dad was always like, if you don't want to sell it, it's not really hurting anything. You clearly love this stuff. Why not hold on to it? It's not hurt. And he actually kind of talked me out of selling a couple of things over the years. That cover is interesting because I always wanted the White Queen and the class picture cover. I wanted those so bad, and I almost sold that cover like 3 times.
Mhm.
I even reached out to, it was Comic Link or Heritage like 3 years ago. I'm like, what do you think? And something in me was like, I don't know. It's so, because I still remember when it popped up in 2007, and I was like, wow, that is so iconic. This cover is just like, I mean, I remember when the book came out, it was like this turning point with the X-Men, and everybody was talking about it. And every time I'm like, no, I think I'm going to hold on to it. And I just never sold it. And at this point, I probably never will. I was really surprised. I didn't realize, I guess it passed me by. I didn't realize it was like such a famous cover. I mean, I knew it was like kind of iconic, but I posted it on CAF because I figured we'd talk. I didn't know if you wanted to discuss it, and I am very careful about like bringing up people or trades or whatever. But
Yeah.
and so I
No, no, I
figured,
don't mind. I don't mind talking about that one just because I've talked about it so much.
oh. So
Yeah.
I threw it up, and I got a lot of people commenting on it. I'm like, wow, I didn't really expect anybody. I thought, I 4 or 5 people might, say something, but I was really surprised. And somebody reached out to me and said, yeah, I remember this cover when Bill sold it. And, yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think it's in my collection for the long haul at this point. I mean, you always want a cover that's like, wow, I recognize this cover from, because I would see it on, you know what it was? The actual reason I put it on CAF wasn't just that. It's some random article, and they were talking about the best Marvel X runs. I don't remember if it was X-Men or runs in Marvel history, and it was number 2, and they had that cover. And every time I see an article about Marvel moving from the old 80s and 90s image style to the modern, they always publish that cover as an example, as like the demarcation point. Not always, but you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
I guess this covers, I remember it, and I bought the whole run when they were coming out. I was really reading a lot of comics then, but I genuinely didn't realize, because I was going to, like I said, I was going to sell it 2 or 3 different times. I was going to use it in a trade for something 4 or 5 years ago. And so I was a little shocked. I probably was one of the ones recently that I'm like, didn't realize it had, a lot of people kind of like
No,
this.
a lot of importance. But yeah, I actually was trying to look through some old photos of my office, and I could not find the one. I know the art is actually just to the right of the furthest image I'm gonna show you, but here all. This is an old picture with of CAF too. This is like CAF in 2004 or 2005 is on my
Is that Dark
screen
Phoenix?
there.
Wow.
But all of these pieces are gone. They all were sold to fuel the mini golf course.
Oh my god! I just saw the stuff that's on the wall. Oh my god! Is that the Jean Grey and the White Queen? Is that quiet? That's not Quietly, is it?
No, that's Adam Hughes. It was a Wizard cover.
That's
I think it's a Brett Booth X-Men cover to the right of that, and then the Quietly was to the right of that. Cassiday's
I recognize that one. Yeah.
And then
what's on the floor in the far corner by the TV?
That was a Sean Phillips Uncanny X-Men cover.
Wow. And that Dark Phoenix. Who was that?
That was a Dan Brereton piece.
Oh, I love him. I really.
And then there's I think that's the Century 2 cover by Jay Lee. It's got Spider-Man on it. It was awesome. So yeah, all gone. Phoenix. Everything there is gone except for the tail end of that little Nightcrawler convention sketch to the left over there. That's still still on my wall.
Is that Brereton not Burton? What's his name? I'm
Dan Brereton.
Brereton. Is that on CAF? Or that's gone, isn't it?
It's gone.
Oh,
it's gone.
Is that a commission?
It was a piece I picked up directly. Yeah, I had him come do it at a show. I can't even remember what, like Heroes or something that. But
because that's probably my favorite design in comics. That and Guardian are the 2 designs. I just love those designs, and I love his work. That's a beautiful piece. man, dude, I'm sorry. It's like I always had this, like, I really don't want to sell stuff. And I really, the biggest trade I did was when I got the Love and Rockets 31 cover, and I had to put a lot of art. But I put a lot of other Jaime Hernandez art in it from volume 2. I had almost an entire volume 2 issue. I think I had 8 or 9 pages, and I had the cover, and I had to throw that into the deal. And I always but I got something really cool. But man, again, I props to my dad, because he was always kind of like, yeah, you don't really need, don't sell it if you really don't want to. I feel bad because it's I don't want to go into the story because I don't have permission from the guy, but people who just had to liquidate their collections, and they had stuff that's like legendary, stuff they bought for $200 that today would be worth 80 grand or something, insane like that. And they sold it to make a business, because their business, they had, I just feel like, it's awful because, it's just kind of a messed up situation. So I'm sorry you sold it. I feel
biggest regrets, but I'm making up for it now, but it took a while.
I just assumed you sold it because you were getting you were getting CAF off the ground or something.
No,
it was upgrading or something.
And
I was like, and at the time, because I think we talked when I bought it, and you were like, I'm built from CAF, and I was like, oh, he's up. That's cool. I can totally respect that. Liquidating art because you have such an incredible site. I've been on this site, or at least lurking, since almost the very beginning, and I joined in 2007. So you do what you got to do. It's just one of those things.
So there was a question from West. He wanted to know if did you have any Ditko pieces?
No, it's funny. My Ditko story. I won't say that. I don't want to say that because I don't have permission from the guy. But I do remember. I'll tell you this story. I was at San Diego Comic-Con in the 80s, and Ditko in the 80s was so cheap. I mean, you could get I still remember Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man pages. I mean, it wasn't like $10, but it was, when they started hitting 100 grand, for a battle page, and I don't even know what the market is for Ditko anymore, because I'm never going to own one. But I never forget, I was at a dealer's booth, and I think this was like 88 or 89, and there was some Ditko on the table, and maybe this may have been 90s. I'm old, my memory's going, but I was talking to the dealer, and I was like, man, I heard a story that one of the issues got thrown over somebody's fence and a dog just tore it to shreds. And he's like, yeah. And he pointed over. He's like, that's the guy. And the guy, I don't know who the guy was. I mean, because I don't really. And he's like, and he kind of told me about. He just happened to be standing like 2 people away from me looking at art. And he's like, yeah. And I mean, it's kind of a very famous, like, horror story in our hobby. I mean, Jesus Christ, what the F? I mean, you think
I haven't heard that story though.
What's that?
But I actually haven't heard the story. But
you don't know that
terrible.
Story? Well,
I've not heard that one.
I'm sure somebody else can correct me if I'm misremembering. The guy had bought, and I'm thinking it is issue 6. I could be wrong about that. That's the one that sticks in my head. Again, if I'm wrong, just bring it up.
Well, Marcus is a whiz at these things. He says issue 6 on the porch.
Okay, and as I remember it, and as I remember the story, it was issue 6. He bought it over the mail, and FedEx was delivering it, and it was the entire issue. I don't think the cover was in there, because the covers, all the 60s covers were printed at a different place, and etc.
Yep.
And they threw the cover. They knocked on the door. The guy wasn't home. Yeah, issue 6. The guy wasn't home, and I heard it. They went, okay, well, they tossed it either over the guy's fence, or they left it. I think it was over the guy's fence. They tossed it over, and the guy had like a Great Dane, and it went play toy, and he just ripped into the issue, like started just tore the issue apart. And I heard from one of the big collectors, I heard from a collector years later that he bought one of the pages. I've seen one or two of the pages from that issue, and they've been restored. There was some paper added, and pages had some restoration. There is a collector I know. I swear I saw it within the last 20 years, and or he may have even posted it somewhere, and you can see it's not, some of it is not that bad. The dog hadn't just ripped it in half and like torn it to pieces, but he tore up a lot of the margins and the gutters in the pages. I never saw it. I kind of heard the story. Yeah, it says Berkey had some of the pages. So, but yeah, some restoration was done, and I did see, I think it was on the CGC boards. I vaguely remember seeing one, and you can see it looks really good now. If you'd have to look for the damage, and again, thankfully, I don't think the dog got into the middle of the page and ripped it in half. I think it was basically it was a flat envelope, and he just chewed the edges apart. But I remember that story.
Yes, that is a horror story.
That is
the
like
last thing you want to have happen.
Steve Ditko Spider-Man entire, not just one page, but the entire effing book, and an early book. I don't know if the later, the books have more value earlier or later. I think they're all pretty much Spider-Man on the page. Is he fighting somebody?
It's an important issue.
What's that?
That's an important issue.
Yeah.
I mean, the book, issue 6. So yeah. Wow.
Brutal.
Yeah.
But anyway, the guy's like, yeah, that was me.
Oh man.
No Ditko pages, no plan in this market. I'm not going to. Maybe I will, but it won't be a Spider-Man page. It'll be like Speedball.
Right. There are still some, there's some pages out there that you can still
the Charlton covers. There's some great Charlton covers. I saw a Captain Atom cover not too long ago. I think it was like $80,000, but I'm not going to own that. But I was like, there's some stuff it's acquirable, but it's not. I love Ditko, but I mean, there's people that just worship Ditko like I worship Kirby, and I don't have the drive to get a Ditko page. I wish. I love it too.
All right, well, we got a couple more pieces to look at that I've got here set up, and let's see. This one is by Mike Waringo.
I mentioned that one. I loved his artwork so much. He was the guy. I love that guy so much. And I remember getting up one morning and 2007, and I read because you get the art list emails, and it was like, he died. I'm like, what? Are you serious? I mean, I literally kind of almost had a meltdown on the list because I was so heartbroken. And then I remember he had a board kind of like Burn Robotics, and I never got a chance to, I never thought about going on there and interacting, but I would lurk, and he was the nicest guy. And I love the way he did women. I mean, they were just, he just had this style about him. And then he was he was one of those artists that just you could see him getting better and better and better as he went on. I mean, you'd go back to his Flash stuff, and it was almost primitive. And then you get to this piece, and then the Fantastic Four. I mean, that's another one that I remember reading over and over and over was his Mike Waringo. Is that how you pronounce his name? I'm so bad.
I could be wrong. That's how I've pronounced it.
Waringo. And oh man, I love that guy's work so much. And he was going to be a big focus of my collecting. And in 2007, he was putting a lot of stuff on eBay in 2007 specifically. There were like entire pencils of Fantastic Four issues on there. I remember it was a dealer that wound up with, he did a 4-issue Spider-Man Fantastic Four crossover. And the covers were just incredible, because his art is just it was like he had like the Byrne qualities, Byrne when Byrne was, in my opinion, that fluid nature where it was just, everything was so beautiful and everything was so slick, and and I remember passing on all those covers like a month, because I think they wanted like $3,500 or $4,000 per cover for that Spider-Man Fantastic Four crossover, and it was on eBay or something, or the dealer. I don't remember. It was 15 years ago, and I'm like, man, I just can't do it. But I did manage to score that one on eBay. He sold the next one too, which is a really cool one of like an alternate version of Carol Danvers in a bioelectric suit flying at Miss Marvel in her costume. I remember passing on it. I'm like, God damn it, I should have grabbed that because it was like $700 or something. I don't remember. I honestly don't remember what I paid for that. But the only one I have another one, which I grabbed on a whim, like the month that this sold. I don't know if you remember the series he did called Avengers Next, and it was kind of a weird series.
I don't remember that. No.
Oh, okay. It was like a female Captain America, and her name was like Sentinel of Liberty, and they had a Juggernaut who was a teenager.
Oh no, okay, I do remember that. I don't remember
so
the title.
Dumb, but
yeah.
I didn't even read the story, but the art. I don't remember if he did the interiors, but he did do. It was like a 4-issue, and he did all the covers. And I had the first issue, and it's like this beautiful shot of the female Captain America leaping at the camera, and he did everything in pencil. I've always wondered about this because if you look at this art, it's perfect. There are no erasing marks of erasing. Like every line was put down and never moved. And I suspect that he probably roughed it out on another piece of paper and then artographed it to this board and then threw the first piece of paper away. And then he would make a blue line copy because the originals of his stuff at a certain point were never inked. There's like a pencil version and then there's an inked version. I have a beautiful Cave Woman. Remember that series Cave Woman? Like an independent. He did a great pinup of Cave Woman and it's inked. And then really later on I went, I don't think there's original pencils under there. I think it's blue line. But yeah, I'm thrilled to have this piece because I really love it. I think I might try and make a copy of it and have somebody, commission somebody to do an ink of it. But yeah, it was that sucks. That sucks that he passed away. That was a big bummer.
It was. It really was. I loved his art.
Oh, I loved his art. Yeah. Maybe I'll get a Telos cover one of these days.
That would be cool.
I think they're really hard to find.
I haven't really. I don't think I've seen any in the market in a while.
I saw one. I don't remember where I saw it. It was on like Comic Link or like maybe the Comic Link art place. I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't buy it, and I mentioned it on one of the seed boards, and people were like, "You saw Telos?" And then I never found it again. I know it was for sale, and it was like $2,000 or something. And oops. I passed on a lot of stuff over the years. I wish I hadn't passed on. Whatever.
But you picked up a lot too. So
I did.
So here, the last piece. I guess I could have shown this one earlier because it was a Kirby, but let's show this one right now. We covered it to 11.
Yeah, I kind of.
Wow.
The thing about this piece is, there's the mentality about black hole collecting versus, putting your stuff out there. And, the two arguments are privacy and fresh to market. And in this piece, I got it for, I don't know what fair market value was when I got it, but this piece got shopped around a lot in the 2000s. From about the time of like 2010, it was offered to me by a dealer in 2011, and then it went into the hands of a pretty well-known collector, and then it went on Heritage again, and then I think it went into somebody else's hands, and then it showed up in 2017, and I think it had just been hit and hit and hit and hit. So when it went on in 17, I was sure that the market value was going to be like 40% higher than it was, and I put a thrill bid in on it, basically what I thought was pretty low, like a real low ball offer, and basically nobody bid against it. I think one person bid during the entire 20 days of the auction, and then when it went live, one person bid it right below to what my reserve was. And I remember winning it, and I wasn't prepared to win this piece, and I just sat in like stunned silence for a full 30 seconds, like, oh man, I really didn't think I was going to get this piece. I'm thrilled with it now, but at the time I had a little bit of buyer's remorse about this one. But it was my sweet spot. Captain America, Jack Kirby, right before the issue before 212. I mean, I'm thrilled with it. I'm never going to get rid of it. It's in my collection for good. So, but it was but my point is, I think there really is something to the fresh to market argument, because I don't think it would have gone for what it went for if it had just been pulled out of a black hole and it hadn't been seen in 30 years. The only other thing I'm going to point out about this cover that's really bizarre is that if you look at Donna Marie's leg, it's a stat, and you can see where her leg is kind of on the right below the N under Falcon. If you look at the way her leg was on the published cover, which I've got right here, you can see that somebody took the leg off, and it's actually, I mean, we're getting into real minutia, but it's in a totally different place. And I always thought that was kind of interesting because clearly when it was originally shot, it looked just like that. But at some point they moved it. I don't know if it was removed and detached.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
And when I got it, you know, because I know that I immediately got out the book and I was looking at it like, oh my God, I got this cover. And the first thing I noticed was, wow, the leg's in the wrong place. And so I put it on a light box and I blasted some light through it. And it does look like that there is an actual drawing of the leg underneath there. And they statted it and then put the copy of the stat on top of it. And then somebody at some point, because it was in a lot of hands, I know this piece in the last 20 years. And I think somebody had it removed to see if it was actually original art under there and then had it put back in its place. And so if anybody knows the answer to that, just for, I'm talking sheer, you know, total minutia, but I'd love to know if anybody can expound on that. Because
I'm sure there is someone out there that knows.
I always wondered about that. But yeah, it was an all right piece.
Now, did you bring any pieces that you didn't send me scans of, Sam?
I did, yes. And this one I brought, it's got an interesting story to it. As I mentioned, in the 1980s, I was a big fan of Golden Age guys. And so I'd go to these conventions. John Byrne never came to the West Coast. He's the only one of my Mount Rushmore guys, Kirby, Byrne, Miller, and Jaime Hernandez, I've never met. And, you know, I've seen him on Byrne Robotics, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to interact with this guy. So, but I love Byrne. Anyway, one year they had Harvey Kurtzman at San Diego Comic-Con. I always regretted not meeting him, getting him signed. It was 1985 because I remember I was really hungry and I was walking out of the dealer's room, and the big guys who had the huge lines they put in the main hall, and they'd have the desk and then they'd have the line go into the dealer's room and it would go down and around the wall. And him I didn't meet, but the guy that they had quarterly update letters back in those days printed on newsprint that had like the people that were going to come. And Alex Schwomberg, who was like the one of the most famous Golden Age guys. Oh man, his art is incredible. He did all those Marvel mystery covers. I mean, they were like kind of a weird analogy, but Iron Maiden covers in the 80s, the Derek Riggs covers where you just look at them and every time, oh wow, there's the TARDIS from Doctor Who. He drew it in the background. There's this, you know, the Schwomberg covers. They told this whole story. I mean, the people, this guy's shooting at this and it's deflecting the bullet, and this guy's shooting over here. Anyway, he was signing, and then when I got there, turned out he was doing sketches. So I'm like, man, take my money. I got to get this guy to do a sketch for me. And he had another one of those crazy psycho lines. I mean, he was by the mouth of the second dealer's room, which I think was closed, and they had him right there. And then his line went through the main lobby into the main dealer's room. It was a long line, I remember. So I got in line. I'm reading my program, looking through books. I got it, and this is the piece, by the way. I do have the, it's hard to see. It hasn't been out of the frame since 1985, but I got a Captain America piece. I don't know if anybody can see this. He kind of signed it to me. It says Sam, Alex Schwomberg, August 3, 1985. I chose Captain America because Cap's always been my favorite, probably because of the Kirby thing. I wanted a piece that character he created, but I didn't know that much about him, and I don't think I even own a single Golden Age book other than that Superman 3. Anyway, yeah, so I got this piece, and I was at the con, and anyway, I'm going to the front of the line, basically. You know, I'm standing in line, and you know, the closer I'm getting to the guy, he doesn't look well at all. He looks pretty confused, and he looks pretty harried, and he probably shouldn't even have been at the convention. I mean, he just looked tired. And there was this handler behind him. And I mean, this guy looked like he was out of The Sopranos. You know, he was this wiry, like he was probably 40, but he looked like he was mid 50s. He had like a wife beater with kind of a you know, see-through button-down shirt. I mean, he looked like kind of a gangster type. And you know, I was always just like, man. And the guy was kind of standing over him. Come on, get this stuff done. People are waiting. And you know, he was trying and he was struggling with it, and it just really left a bad taste in my mouth. Like, you know, we know about the Stan Lee, um, you know, abuse thing, and I think there was something that happened with Nichelle Nichols, her from Star Trek. I don't know. I don't follow it very, but man, you know, I was through. I remember being at the time. I was like, man, I got this sketch. I mean, it's Golden Age artist, but it was really a weird scene, and
Right.
it kind of felt bad.
That's too bad.
It was really bad, and I don't know how much longer
unfortunate
he
to
was
see that.
around after that. But he shouldn't have been.
98, I think he died, yeah, just before 2000, so 98, 99.
So, man, who
Yeah.
knows? I don't want to start. I don't know. I don't know. He just didn't look good. He looked sick and confused, basically. And you know, and it's like, I met really quickly. I'll show this one. I get the same year I got this piece, which is a Martin Odell Green Lantern piece. And you know, it was like the opposite. They were the nicest people in the world. They gave me their phone number. I was too shy to call them. I was going to get a commission. We were going to do like a special Green Lantern cover with a story that, you know, like a fake, never published story. And I never did it because it was $250. I remember that. And but he did that for free. He's like, oh man. And he loved, oh, you're into Golden Age people. I mean, this is really neat. You're, you know, and his wife, you know, they seemed to, so it was just like, you know, you had that, and then you had Porsche Womberg. It's like, just, I don't know. It was a weird thing. I almost didn't even tell the story.
No. Well, you know, that again, that's a part of the hobby. At the end of the day, you know, and we can look back to the idea that, you know, these guys didn't have retirement. Oh, it's upside down.
Yeah, I just realized that.
He's parachuting, but you know what I mean. They didn't have retirement plans and stuff, so they needed to continue to make money. Unfortunately, that's why stuff like the
exactly. And I do remember the sketch was really expensive. It was I think it was $75, which again, you know, nowadays that's
right.
But back in the 80s, a sketch for $7,500, that was a fair amount of money. That was respectable because you could get it. I think the average sketch from the random guy was like $25 back in those days.
Sure.
And, yeah. So that was
that's still, but it's still not, at the end of the day. I mean, it's unmistakably his work, you know.
You can see it in the face.
Oh gosh, yeah.
A real distinctive way of
even in the anatomy too. I mean, it's, you know, that's just, I think back to different cap covers that are out there. I mean, it's there. I mean, that's him. I mean, it's amazing that he was still doing well, artwork, at least even in that condition.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, I was thrilled. I mean, I remember I had it displayed in my hotel room, and my dad again framed it for me for Christmas. It's never been out of the frame. I am going to put it on CAF one of these days. I'm in the process of moving, and so I'm getting stuff in boxes. And once I get settled at my new place, one of the reasons I didn't bid on that Iron Man cover is I'm like, I can't afford. I've got too many adult responsibilities. But I'm going to get some of these sketches that I've had for years scanned and those Robinson sketches and put them up. Again, it was that I'm kind of at this point. I'm not really a black hole guy. I'm probably going to pull. I've got a few other pieces, but I probably pull most of them out by the end of next year, I think.
Cool. Well, I think a lot of people are going to be paying attention to your CAF gallery now, and it is linked in the description to the shows too. So I should have mentioned that at the beginning of the show. If anybody wanted to hop over and check out Sam's CAF gallery, the link is in there. Or if you on CAF, it's Sam H, just the H as the last name. So you can.
We're doing just the last initial. So I for some reason.
No. I don't have a problem with it. Lots of people, you know, do use the complete aliases. So at the end of the day, whatever makes people feel most comfortable, I've always been good with. I wish I had a formal way of letting like just a username show, like somebody could just put it in and it'll flow right. But I've always, we built it as a first name, last name. And so we're not stuck with it, but it's what we've used. So not a big deal, but
my last name is Hare. It's right there. So I'll change it to Hare at some point, but
doesn't, hey, you don't have to if you don't want to. But I hate to say this, I got to call it a night. I've got a few things I got to finish up this evening. But listen, Sam, this has been 10 tons of fun. It really, I mean, I knew that you were going to have a lot of great stories for considering when you started collecting. So and you didn't disappoint. And this is and I wish I would have remembered up until I had forgotten who you were until you sent me the art images, and I was like, oh, there it is.
Oh man!
So I think it's great to be able to see that again, and really, because it's a piece that I deleted from my CAF gallery. I didn't have a scan of it anymore, and I kind of was mad about that too. I literally nuked it from my hard drive. I was
really?
Yeah. So just getting a nice scan of it back is made me happy to see that. So yeah, thank you for that.
Absolutely. There was one other thing, but maybe next time.
You sure? I mean, if you want to show one more, I mean, what is it? You think? Come on, why not? One more piece of art before we call it a night.
All right. Okay. This was I'll try to make it quick, but this was it was 1985. It was my third San Diego Comic Con. I went down there and I was in the dealer's room and I was walking on the far western wall, and there was an end cap with original art. And I'll never forget this. The art was like B and C level material. It was like, stuff, setups for pages you'd want to own, and foreshadowing of stuff and pages, and keep people talking.
But not the home run.
Not home runs. I don't remember a single piece of art that was there. There was stuff he had a wire frame. It was a small booth. It was only one table by one table. There's probably 1, 2, 3 stacks, and then 1, 2, 3 stacks, right? And I'm flipping through the stacks at the time, and I come across this cover, which I hadn't seen in 40 years, and I stumbled across it last week for the first time in 40 years. It's on a guy named Jordan Janou, Joanou.
Jordan, of course. So.
Okay, I'd never, and he had it, and I was like, oh my god! It was Tales of the Green Lantern number 195, and it's a Thomas Sutton cover. It's beautiful. It's like, it reminds me a lot of the X-Men 114, because he's lit from behind. He's saying something Guy Gardner-esque, like hey losers, I'm back here. I'm here. I think it's the first issue he became Green Lantern. I thought he was in the Neil Adams issues, but I don't know the Guy Gardner story very well. I didn't follow it. I remember the issue tied into Millennium, which I was not a fan of that crossover, but the cover was amazing. So I asked the guy, how much do you want for this cover? He says $50. I had like $85 on me, and I was Saturday. I still had to get through Sunday. I'm like, damn, all right. So I set it aside, and I was pretty sure I was going to get it. And I go to this other stack, and it's almost at the bottom of this stack. I found this piece.
What?
How
much was that?
So I asked the guy. He's like, $50. And I'm like, okay. And he explains it to me. He's like, this is the production cover for Giant Size X-Men number 1. And I'm like, man. So I start arguing with the guy. I'm like, would you take $45? He's like, no, I don't want $45. It has to be $50. And so I get him down to $45. And, we all know where the original is, but this is apparently the piece that was shot to make the original issue. It's got all the stats, everything's on there. There's actually some original art, actually, believe it or not. The edge of Nightcrawler, Storm's cape on this side are sort of art corrections. So I talk him into $45. And as soon as I walk away with it, I'm like, damn it, I just bought a glorified photocopy and I did not want this thing. And so I had my friend who just bought the Alpha Flight 7 cover there, and I tried to sell it to him. I'm like, do you want to buy into the, buy this? Nobody wanted it, and I could tell the guy just regarded it as total junk. And,
right.
my friends see it and they're like, it's really cool. I mean, it's, it's, you look at it and it looks like you're looking at, the original art to Giant Size.
Right.
And, it is what they shot. Right. So,
Of course.
I start walking around the con with it, and I come to this table. He's kind of near where the table where I bought the Daredevil covers was. And the guy's like, there's a guy with a bunch of books. He's like, man, that's really cool. You want to trade it? And he points to this Daredevil #1. It was beautiful. It was like a 9.0 #1, all bright colors, bright whites, bright. And he's kind of pushing on me to trade. And I'm like, I don't know. I explained to him what it was. It's like, this is, it's not the original art, it's the production cover. And he's like, I don't care. I think that would look really cool on my wall. So finally, I'm like, maybe I'll just hang on to it. So I'm walking around and like I have people stopping me and taking my picture. And there are somewhere wearing a pit helmet. It's in that same era. I look just like those pictures you had. And I've got this thing in my hand. Clearly people are thinking it's, because
Right.
I kind of went for it because I'm like, the Guy Gardner covers, it's art, but this, even 10 years after the publication of Giant Size 1, it was an iconic book. Even in 85, it was like kids like me were like, I know that book. That's pretty, it looks really cool. So I got a couple of pictures taken. I'll never forget, right towards the end of the con, I was over by Mile High, had a room where they had, back in the later days, they had all their books in there and you had to check your bags. So I'm standing in front of that room. I don't think Mile High was there. And this British guy comes over. He's like, he's got blazer, he's got the hair, he's got like a medallion or something. So I'm going on a plane right now, going back, I'm leaving the convention. I think it was a Saturday or Sunday. And he's like, let's get a deal. Let's do this. Let's make this happen. I want to buy that cover. I'm like, dude, I hate being pressured like that. I almost was like $5,000, but no, that's not cool. And I go, dude, it's the production cover. He's like, oh, okay. And he walks away. So we get on the bus. My friend's Robert. I don't remember if he had the Alpha Flight cover, but we're on there, and we're the shuttle back to the hotel, and Len Wein walks in, and he's coming in because he was, like a regular. He's all, that's really cool. And he points at, because my friend and I were like looking at it because it does look, looks pretty cool.
Oh yeah, it does.
And we're like, we're kind of tripping on it a little bit. And Len sits down. I think he sat behind us and he started explaining, that's really cool. Do you know what that is? I said, I've sort of explained. So, well, we had to, the art was, I guess I don't remember. It was 37 years ago. So the art was really oversized and we had to shoot it down. And there's this this effect that's on the original X-Men up at the top. Now it would be like a point and click type of a thing. And we had to put that effect on there and this and that. And it was really cool. It was the first time I'd ever met him. I was a little starstruck because I knew he was an editor-in-chief at Marvel. And I took it back a couple more years. I thought maybe I'll do a trade or something, but it just never happened. And I wound up keeping this piece. I was going to put it on CAF at one point, but I just never did it. One of these days. But anyway.
Well, we got to see it here. That's the. See, I'm glad we didn't end the conversation when I was thinking. No,
I told you I had a weird cover oddity, didn't I?
You did, and I'm sorry, it kind of slipped my mind when we got to that point. But no, that's awesome. And to think that photographs of you, from that era, holding that cover
with the pith helmet, I used to wear shorts all the time. The weird braces and the strange haircut, and then I'm holding this strange, cover. But
that's awesome.
Right on. All right. Well, thank you, Bill. I really appreciate you talking to me.
Sam, it was honestly a pleasure. And again, that's what's been so cool about doing these again is, you've been a member of CAF for a long time, like you said, and you're a lurker. You haven't posted, a lot of art over the years, but, a bit. And the last few years with COVID and just, more people showing more pieces of art as the value goes up, it's brought a lot of collections out. And I think it's great. I'm so happy that, the hobby, the status of the hobby is where it's at right now. And I think it's, I'm just so happy we got a chance to talk about this. So, if there's ever anything I can do for you, just let me know. I mean, I love the fact that you're sharing these pieces that have been, you are the black hole collector that a lot of people, talk about and don't know anything about. And
I just hope people start. I mean, I get the fresh to market thing kind of undermines a lot of black hole collectors pulling stuff out, but it sucks. I wish more people like that guy said on CGC board. Just put an anonymous board and put this art out there. I mean, that Alpha Flight 12 cover, man, I want to see that. I mean, there's a lot of, and that's just my cover. That I want to see. There's tons of covers that have never surfaced that people would just give anything to see. I mean, this stuff is our museum. This is our Picasso, Rembrandt's. I mean, I just love this stuff, and I love the art. I love the world. So thanks again, Bill. It's been an honor.
Well, and like I said, it's just been fantastic to look at this stuff. And that last piece, I mean, you had told me we were going to pull out a few things out, but that last one was the killer. So I'm glad.
I figured I'd give you the scoop here.
No. Somebody's going to contact you through your CAF gallery wanting that. Now, just just a fair warning. I'm sure it's going to. So
there's a few people
that's a piece of history
I haven't actually. I've shown it to a handful of people, but I've never really publicly pulled it out. And I figured since you were nice enough to ask me for the interview, I figured I'd give you a scoop at the end or something.
I've got the scoop.
Whatever. I'm in Facebook jail right now for the stupidest thing. So
I know you told me that was crazy. Yeah, just for a typo.
Yeah, it's so dumb. Facebook and their algorithms, but yeah, once I get back on, maybe I'll throw it up on the OA.
You'll get a lot of talk going on when you do that. But all right, well, listen, again, it's been a lot of fun, and again, I can't thank you enough for doing it, and I can't thank everybody enough for tuning in throughout the show. It was a long one, but it was a lot of fun.
Well, thank you very much, Phil. Appreciate it.
And the thing is, I hope to get more stories like this out there because so many people.
I do too. I'm hoping that maybe me doing this will get other people to just. You don't have to show everything in your collection, but let's see some stuff that hasn't been seen.
Tell a few stories. I mean, this is from a period, and when we were talking about the Ditko thing, I actually, as you were saying it, I'm like, I know I've heard that before because I've known Berkey for a while.
I'm sure it's a famous. If I know this story, then most collectors.
Yeah, it's just been a while since it's come up, but yeah, but again, but just hearing the stories of because you had talked about times in front of Frank Miller at shows and. When nobody else saw him. I mean, I have the similar experiences when I saw him early on, even after Wolverine, just everybody would flock to Byrne and nobody would talk to Miller at all. He'd be all alone. He looked lonely. And this is at his peak time period, and so yeah, these are great stories.
Byrne was only there once that I was aware of. He was never there. I think Rob Liefeld mentioned on one of the boards, he actually was there in the 90s for Image, but he was never there. But Miller was always there. I mean, a story I didn't tell, but I remember finding Miller watching. It was like the Bud Plant table in 1985. It may have been that 84 when I had that stack of Daredevils. And I'm like, I recognized him because I was a huge fan. And I'm like, Frank, would you start signing? I had this stack of books. And my dad was with me. And he's like, Frank, and he was real cool. He's like, my dad's finally, okay, let's go. Let's just try and watch.
Let the guy rest. Watching it. Frank Miller having to watch Bud Plant's booth. There you go.
I don't know if it was his booth, but I remember him watching it was a big booth, and it was during a big, what are those things? Panel,
right here. You go. Yeah.
There was nobody in the dealer's room at that point. So yeah. Anyway, thank you again, Bill. I appreciate it.
All right, Sam. No, my pleasure. And again, thanks everybody. Got a few more shows this week, tomorrow and Thursday as well. So I hope to see you guys on there. And I'm doing a live sale with Neil Adams on Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, that should be fun. I've actually never really talked with him before, so it should be a fun interview. I know he's got a lot of stories to tell. So I'm going to kind of work the comic art angle of his impact on our hobby before we start doing the sale, just to kind of see what his opinions are of where the hobby's at today. And I do, he was, I think in a lot of ways we wouldn't have the hobby we have today if he wasn't out there getting the art back for creators and everything. So I'm looking forward to that chat on Saturday.
He's another rock star for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody, calling it a night. Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you.
Good evening.